Hello? Can you give me an emoji if you can hear me? Because I don't know if it's working. Um, okay, I see Gloria reacted with an emoji, so maybe this is working. Okay, I'm just going to start inviting people up. Hey, I'm Alisha.eth, and let's talk to as many people in the ENS community as we can and just create a space which I know will get heated, but I just kind of ask that everyone react with like an open mind and I don't know, just mutual respect, I think is a good starting point. So let me just, one second, I'm just going to pull up some of the community stewards who just tweeted about an update in the governance forum. If you're looking for information, you can find it at discuss.ens.domains. One second. Okay, so Jordan, do you just want to run through what just happened with the community stewards and the post in the governance forum? And maybe if you could pin that tweet, otherwise I can find it on your...
Yeah, I don't know if I can pin
Okay,
tweets as
I'll
a
find it.
speaker. Okay, thank you. Hey everyone. Yeah, so I'm one of the community stewards for the ENS DAO. Also, my intention is not to speak that much in this space, but to more so allow others to speak and get their thoughts and feelings out. But yeah, generally, I mean, I think everyone knows the most of the context of the actual situation here. But basically what has occurred in the last like hour or so is that the ENS DAO has been discussing things on the forum and elsewhere, and there is a post in the forums right now discussing like the next steps overall regarding the situation, and a couple of potential routes or plans of action. And so I'd recommend checking out the forums. In addition to that, there are 5 community stewards in the ENS DAO working group. It's myself, Coltron, Limes, Validator, and Brantly himself. And the community stewards have gotten together to vote to remove Brantly as a community steward. And we got a majority vote, so that will be occurring at some point in the near future. I do want to note that being removed as a community steward is not necessarily the most impactful thing that can happen. Community stewards don't really have a lot of power, but it is kind of a first step and kind of a signaling a bit that we take this seriously. So this is the first of potentially many steps, and yeah, that's pretty much the latest.
Cool, thanks, Jordan. Okay, a lot of people are requesting to speak, so I'm going to just like run through the stage and just give everyone... I wonder if we could maybe just bring people up in waves, give everyone a chance to speak, and then if there's discussion, then we can do that. But Dame.eth.
Hey everybody. I won't take I won't take long because I'm actually in the car at the moment, so I can't speak very long. But I just want to say thanks to Jordan and the other stewards who are moving quickly on this and taking action. And I think giving a clear next steps as to what's going to occur is really great. There's the post that the post that Jordan referenced that's next steps on the forum. I think does a really great job of outlining the next possible things that can occur. I think it was James that put that up, one of the delegates. Highly recommend folks check that out.
I just pinned that as well, I think.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. I'm glad that he put that up. I feel like that gives me a lot of confidence in that this is being handled very clearly, and I feel like I don't know. I'm glad to see this happening. So yeah.
Cool, perfect. Faith.
Hi,
Love.
Hi,
Hi.
everybody.
Hi.
I'm really, 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 really happy that this is happening. I was a little disturbed yesterday, and I was hoping that this was the route that was taken by the community. I think it's a great show of true decentralization and the use of a DAO. Whatever happens moving forward here is really just going to be the blueprint moving forward in the space and for things that just aren't allowed. While we can all be pro freedom of speech and stuff like that, I do feel like everything just does not need to be said. And I don't know, like I want to see this happen and really just play out before I have any feelings, like strong feelings towards it, because I'm still just kind of hurting and a little disturbed.
Yeah, I think that that's really fair in terms of like where a lot of people are, and hopefully this space is just a way to help everyone kind of just like process how they are feeling. Um, Madam Cult Leader, how are you?
Yeah, hi, Alicia. Thanks for hosting this space. I think where I'm at is, again, this for me is a test of, DAOs or um, digital organizations, DORGs, I've been calling them. This is a test of Web3 technology. This is a test of our collective, like, humanity, really. This, for me, this is the test of, like, what really is Web3. Um, and like I think my initial response is I laugh because I'm not surprised. I predicted this last year about like as Web3 is truly becomes a diverse place, this is going to happen. Like, I'm not surprised. What we're doing here is historic. There's never been like a global and deeply diverse space created like this. So I am nigh surprised that the Giga Chads are Giga Chadding and rearing their ugly heads, or we are uncovering the ugly things that they believe and say. Right? This is not surprising to me whatsoever, and I'm like, you know, just interested to see how we collectively as a community move into the future. What are the core tenets of our spaces, right? Are like what does that look like? These are all like I think historic things to contend with. What does it look like to be inclusive space? What does it look like to center diversity, equity, and inclusion? Like what do those things look like? I don't have an answer, right? We are doing this in modern times. We are, there are women leaders, there are black leaders, there are queer leaders, there are trans leaders in Web3. That is historic. So we are all figuring this out as we go together. And I want to like underscore that for everybody. We don't have a solution. We don't have an answer. What is like, I think about free speech, right? Where like black people in the United States weren't able to vote or were, killed at the ballot box, right? What was free speech then for black people? What is free speech now for black people? What is speech now? Right? And these are all questions that we have to collectively contend with as a community. What is speech? Right? What is freedom? What is liberty? What is liberation? All these questions I don't have answers for, right? Which might be like not fun, but I think that's honest. And like I think we just need to ask these questions together and, via good community practices, decide on the answer, right? Through consensus, decide what we collectively believe. And if we collectively believe that we don't want people saying trans people don't exist and erasing my existence, then that's what we believe, right? And then other communities can say, actually, we do believe that trans people don't exist, and then that can be what they believe. So again, the beauty of this digital world is that we can make our own communities, we can make our own subsections of what our beliefs are and allow people who believe that to come and who don't believe that to go. And that is reclaiming our power as people in this like global space of saying we believe this, you can come here if you believe that, or you can leave. um, it's just going to be interesting because ENS is one of the biggest, most prolific protocols out there. So, what does it look like if this community forks? If this is a huge fissure that splits 50-50, what does that look like? So there are just more questions than there are answers. And like Faith, I'm not taking .eth out of my name because technically it's a centralized protocol. Brantly doesn't own this. We own this. And I'm curious to see what we as the community do and the choices we make, and that will dictate how I feel as a trans person, as a queer person in this space in reference to ENS.
Yeah, thank you so much, Madam Cult Leader. And Mick, I'd love to come to you next.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I think if I can just add to what Madam Cult Leader was just saying about the ENS, I took my .eth off. I feel a very personal disdain for the association. I don't want to be associated with ENS right now. I spend an awful lot of time in ENS spaces with both you and Brantly. I came to know ENS as Brantly. There wasn't an ENS space that I was ever in that didn't have him in it. So the first thing I felt was grossed. I felt like I wanted to take a shower. Felt like the biggest rug of the year for me. And I dumped my token. So I no longer have any governance. Now, should I have bought more? Should I have made a call for delegation? Maybe. But you know what I don't have? I don't have the emotional energy to solve this problem for anybody. I'm impacted by a lot of what was said. The life expectancy for trans women in this country is 35 due to murder. I think it's hella unsafe to double down on that kind of language. I think that to wake up this morning and not see a public statement from ENS makes me very uncomfortable. I know you, Alisha, to be the second in command, and I don't know if that's true, but when it comes to seeing that people in this space that represent ENS, it was Brantly and you. Not saying that you have anything to do with this or have ownership of it, just saying I don't know who's at the wheel of the ship. And I think it's wildly uncomfortable to be on a ship when no one is driving it. So, yeah, when it was 9 a.m. on a Sunday, I said, okay, let me give you all grace because people live on the West Coast. I'll give you to 12 to see if anybody has anything to say. To think that there are people who are contemplating suicide and have somebody with his amount of access and podium to say such things and have them up for hours and have no public statement against that, to me, is negligent. There's too much hate in those words for them to not have been addressed. Now, I'm aware that there are things going on in the back channel. I have people who have sent me the messages he's been writing in Discord. I've been invited to the conversation he was in last night. I have no interest in any of it because that is I've already talked about this for 5 hours. I just left a space that I opened at noon to hold space for people who wanted to discuss this and other things because it isn't just about Brantly. It's about Cooper Turley. It's about, what's that other guy's name? George Leon. It's about all of the folks who I've come in contact with who have been overtly oppressive in their speech, in the way that they've operated, in the lack of accountability that they have for themselves when they are found out. We were talking about the NFT people a couple days ago, how flippant they were to dismiss the concerns of the community when people know that they make money shilling rugs, right? Like this space has the availability to hold people accountable in a way that I think I just expected a swift and immediate reaction, and I haven't seen it yet. This space doesn't cut it. Your personal statement doesn't cut it. I appreciate that you said something, but I need it coming from ENS. And I think it hasn't because there's no one else there who has that kind of ownership of it. He was the fifth highest holder of the token. He's the biggest validator to the protocol. I can only hope that there is a way to not only fire him, but to force him to sell his token, buy him out, and disassociate. Because it doesn't, to me, reflect an effort to make this a fair, equitable, and safe space for anybody but het cis white guys. To hide behind religion is bullshit. Because if an Islamic extremist came in this room and said women should bow to our feet and are worthless, we wouldn't excuse it because that's their belief system. To interpret Catholicism to mean you can hate people publicly and conflate free speech with hate speech, unfucking acceptable. Sorry.
Yeah, Mick, I really appreciate you speaking, and I know that energetically and emotionally, this is something that you people shouldn't have to fight this fight, like take it upon themselves to do this. And I think that this is, it's funny. Someone messaged me this morning and said, like, just with regards to my comments, that kind of like as a woman of color, that they appreciated that. And I think that the thing is, for me personally, is that the reason, and I was just saying this is someone else on the call, that the reason I feel empowered to speak at all, when I definitely know I wouldn't probably otherwise do it if I was outside of Web3, like if I was in Web2 in real life, is because of like the diversity of experience in my lens of Web3, that I know that I don't know, my Web3 is different. So, but I do acknowledge that it's not, it's not like I am the person in power, or that has a lot of power within, ENS is a protocol. So there's TNL, which is True Names Limited, which is the core team, and then the ENS DAO, which at the moment, I guess the power is distributed to delegates, and then also stewards are in a position of power, and hopefully community members as well. But Madam Cult Leader, I saw that you're handing up.
Yeah, I wanted to say that that something I was talking about in another room, because I've been talking about this, a little bit yesterday, is that something that'll be really awesome, and I'll give this to the space as a potential solution, is we have blockchain now, right? We can literally pay people for the emotional quote unquote damages, right? And also pay people to do restorative justice, right? We have the different power here where ENS can make a proposal and people can sign it saying, okay, we're going to pay MEC, or we're going to pay and we're going to pay whoever is in the space who's queer and trans, and we're going to pay them to update our community and to make it a safe space for them. We're going to pay them to do that. We're going to, pay She 256. We're going to pay She-Fi. We're going to pay Surge Women, or queer trans organizations in the Web3 space, and then have them be consultants to update our community and update our best practices to include queer and trans voices. These things can be done instantaneously, right? These things can be spun up in seconds, right? I mean, maybe hours, gets people to write the proposal, but the power we have here is so different in terms of economic empowerment. And the thing that's disappointing to me is that ENS and the space at large is not imagining a larger way to use blockchain outside of voicing, hey, we are safe, right? What's the economic safety that ENS is providing to queer and trans people, and to women, and to BIPOC folks? What does that look like, right? And I haven't seen that from not just ENS, but from any Web3 protocol at large. And I think that's a failure of the imagination of Web3 leadership. And I hope that me saying this inspires ENS to be the first person to say, hey, actually, we're going to pay, queer and trans Black folks, or we're going to pay queer and trans folks at large and have them consult, and pay sex workers or pay whoever and have them consult and ensure that this is a safe space, rather than doing free labor, community free labor, pay people. And for example, I'm not being paid for speaking right now. And that is also part of this conversation where I don't have to be here, but I chose to be here because I care about Web3, but this is still free labor. This is still free emotional labor. So there's that whole piece of this where we have to contend with that, right? If we're going to be the future of the economic and social system, we have to think more boldly about what blockchain can enable in terms of all this stuff. There's nothing stopping us from doing any of these things I've outlined, especially within DAOs or DORGs. So I want to push that to you, Alisha, and also ENS, to imagine bigger about what can be done, and also, compensating potentially people who speak today and saying, we value you not just in your words, but we value in your labor, and we pay you for your labor, and we pay you for your emotions because we view your emotions as valuable from an economic standpoint. So that the tea is hot, mama, but that's the tea, right? If we're going to stand by different principles, we got to stand by different principles. And if we're going to do a different system, we got to do a different system. And it's not going to change if Black and brown people continuously, and queer and trans people and women and everyone continuously does free labor. That's not the vibe anymore for me in Web3, right? That's crypto, that's Giga Chad. So yeah, just thoughts, just suggestions, but I'll let
Yeah,
go ahead.
I really appreciate those suggestions. And I think the thing that just stuck out to me with what you said is with the paid consultant aspect of it, which is, you know, paying people to be for the labor, you know, both in terms of like the work output, but also like the emotional output. I think this is like, hello, this is the opportunity here with DAOs that paid consultants are not just consultants, they turn into paid contributors. What does it mean for a consultant to become a contributor? Because there is definitely a difference. And I think it's like one thing to pay for consultancy. I mean, come on, guys, you know what the consultancy industry is like. It's really different to have people who are within the community who have, you know, who are aligned with a vision, who are part of a family. I think, like, I don't know how else to think about like how to communicate that it means something different to be a contributor. And now we have like you know, EN said, we have tools with blockchains and DAOs to do something with that. So thanks so much, EN. I saw Chris, did you have your hand up?
Yeah. So hey,
Hey.
thanks for doing this, Alicia. I first wanted to start by saying that I read your pin tweet thread, and I was like, yes, I love this reaction because it is a reaction that is starting from with a message of warmth and inclusivity, and saying that you do not agree with Brantly's statements. And I love this approach. The thing that I have actually been pretty upset about is the demands that I've seen all over the place. Like, and what I've also already heard here is like, this is not enough action. He should be fired immediately. So before I want to actually, I came here to actually come with a bit of a counter argument. And so I will immediately, before I enrage too many people, I will start by saying that, so I come here as a queer gay person. And I also come here as a person who is triggered a lot by all of this, because as a gay person, when I was young, I was bullied, and I've seen very often, so I'm very often triggered by bullying. And so to many people, this is not cancel culture. They are just saying this person should not be at ENS because we have to think about the values. My thoughts about this is that yes, we should focus on values. We should talk about these things. We should be enraged about these things. And I think that's really, really important. And it could lead to, for ENS to really have a very clear code of conduct and saying like, this is what we tolerate in our community and this is what we do not. And if Brantly, at some point now, or in as of the moment that that code of conduct is there, says publicly some things that are considered as hate speech or that are really not okay, then Brantly could be removed from this function, or Brantly could not have certain tasks delegated to him that are about like actually compiling a new version of the code of conduct or other things that are like ethically linked. But if Brantly is the person who is doing the very best job at ENS to really build the decentralized future that we want to see, and as of the moment that that code of conduct has been proposed, and he does nothing to infringe this, should he be fired from his function? That is the thing that I'm wondering about. Is that not the important question? And right now, should Brantly be apologizing if he does not believe what he would be apologizing for? Like, there is so much there are so many people in the space who have very biased views, who have values that I deeply disagree with, who have done things that I deeply disagree with. I would want like half of them to quit if I would want them to agree with all the things that I deeply believe in. So here I'm thinking like, okay, someone who is very religious and has these ideas, well, I am not the person who's gonna like get all the homophobia out of the world. Do I want all homophobes to be like canceled and fired from the things they're doing if they are the best people to do those things? I really deeply disagree with this. It's like if he's awesome at
Okay,
what
I'm
he's
sorry.
doing.
I got to
Okay,
I got to interject. I got to interject because what you're saying is bordering on defense, and I'm not here to support any kind of defense of this behavior. If you're telling me that you're okay as a queer person being discriminalized against and having hateful speech be directed toward you, and it's okay if that person doing the job is the best for it, we disagree. Okay? I
oh
don't give a
yeah,
shit.
we
Listen.
disagree.
I know.
Yeah.
No, let me finish. I don't give a shit how good you are at your job. If you're a hurtful, harmful person, you gotta go. Period.
This person said this in 2016, and this has been
Listen.
resurfaced now.
You're talking about tweets he wrote 7 years ago, but he doubled down on them 7 minutes ago. So I don't want to hear it. Okay?
Uh,
He is not walking back those statements. What he's saying is, I finally have my first mob. Looks like people finally read the first word in my bio. Somebody
yes,
asked him. Somebody asked him if he was okay with transgender hentai cats, and he said, "Yeah, I'm cool with them." He's having a fucking bubble right now. He is not walking back anything that he said. So to say that those were 7 years ago, they're today. Okay, this is how he feels today. He's
yes.
supporting it. He actually tweeted back at it saying, "The Pope agrees with me." You don't get to defend him in this space. I'm not here for this.
Okay, so
Chris,
can
as a
can
queer
can
person, I think you need to be on the right side of history with this one and shut the fuck
okay,
up.
so can I please I hear you, and to finish my point, the thing that I actually started with when I said like me as a bullied person gets triggered by this in the sense that if someone suddenly digs up tweets from 7 years ago for whatever reason, and you see a mob starting to like retweet like thousands of times the people you consider
I
your
gotta
friend,
go. This is
your
bullshit.
and your community, then you will react in with a fight or flight kind of reaction. And I do get that sentiment. And if he has not changed his opinions, he will not say that he has. And I do get that. Am I condoning it? Am I agreeing? No. Do I think that it is horrible? Am I outraged by it? Yes. Do I think he should be fired from ENS? No, I disagree there. That's my only
Okay,
point.
thanks, Chris. I can see Faith has a hand up, and then I will come to Paul's Doith. I know that, and I know there are people who are requesting as well. Just bear with me, Faith.
Hi, Chris. I just like Mech. I'm a little appalled with your statement, and I'm glad that you said it in front of all of these people in the room. Let me tell you why what you said is completely wrong. When you come into a space like this where it's pretty clear that people are against it, especially those of us who are on the stage, you're creating this apologist narrative. You're up here basically apologizing for him, and that's exactly what's wrong with the space right now. So basically what you're saying is, if we uncovered, because first of all, stop using the word mob to describe those of us who are deeply hurt by what he did and what he said. Not only did he offend Black people, but he also offended those of us who are part of the LGBTQ community, which is that's disturbing. We're killed for both of these things on a daily. The problem is, you're basically saying, without saying it, if we uncovered that Brantley uses the N-word on a daily, you're gonna come up here, call us a mob, say we're bullying him, and that we should be okay with him still keeping his job, although he's using derogatory terms. It's not about the fact that we're bullying him. He does not feel any remorse for the harmful things that he said. They're heinous. They're heinous. People are murdered for the stuff that he said on his Twitter account, and he doesn't care. He didn't even delete them. He more than doubled down. He quadrupled down on what he said. Like, he was laughing in our faces. We're a joke to him. I'm blocked. That's offensive. You're, first of all, you're silencing me and you're erasing me, because now, since I'm blocked, I don't matter to him because I'm gay. Do you see the problem with this?
I deeply see the problem with this. But I think saying that someone has no regrets or that he has not changed his opinion, I'm not sure that is the case. And just to be clear, I don't want to defend him. I just think that like him doing his I think it's an invitation to have a very clear code of conduct, and I love that the discussion is happening. And I am not defending this person, and I will and have always fought homophobia. I just find, I think we should really consider the idea that maybe immediately firing someone who is really the best person at doing the job. I don't know if he is. I think that's the thing that should be evaluated mostly.
Okay, thanks, Chris and Faith, for the response. Paul.eth, thanks for your patience.
Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for doing this space, firstly. And just wanted to thank all the speakers so far for their contributions. I think at this point, so I feel fairly invested in ENS. I'm a business owner, and I'm hoping to further invest in ENS. So obviously, the sort of decisions of the DAO are fairly crucial to my future investment. Both, we're talking about emotional and financial, and of course, labor. I just want to kind of talk a little bit about, be as brief as possible on this, because I know there's lots of people that want to speak. So thank you for your patience. I've been running community projects since 2014, both online and offline. You can check me out in my bio. I'm fairly available. You can have a look at that if you want to. I'm all about safety and inclusion, and building platforms for free speech. I think free speech is very important in our society, and that's something that I have been doing since 2014 to try to support. So that's the first thing I'd like to say in order to have platforms for free speech. It's interesting that obviously for whatever Brantly did, he's been blocked off Twitter. Obviously wanted to sort of first say that, Brantly being the face of ENS, as someone that holds, his views. I read his bio immediately, so I don't know, there's a little bit of a thing going on with him saying about, people reading his bio, and some people don't read bios. But, in having spoken with the man, I felt like I had some trust in him, as first thing to say, because I had several conversations with him, like on Spaces, and for him being the face of ENS. And so I feel, unfortunately, a little bit betrayed by some of the comments that I've read, and just trying to catch up as well. Maybe I've missed quite a few things. My DMs are open if anyone wants to send me more information about what's happening. Obviously, I get that I feel that there needs to be a little bit of a change up, potentially with Brantly being the face of ENS. And I think that's kind of been something that has been assumed by some of the community. Certainly something I have, maybe ingested and, kind of arrived at, personally. So, I'd like to see a variety of faces. And I don't know the plan for that. I'd like to hear more about that, because I don't think we should have an issue with religion. But, obviously, there are challenges when lots of different religions come together all in a space, especially like this. Just as a business owner, I've been telling people to, potentially get involved in ENS, and that's something I'm hoping to do. So I'd like to, hear more about that. Obviously, as business owners, get involved in ENS and, buy domains which are potentially going to be 3 or 4 or 5 characters.
I wonder, Paul's.eth, I just wonder if we could maybe just stick to the human element of this conversation just before we delve into business considerations. I just feel like there's just a lot of I don't know, very deeply personal experiences that I just am hoping to give space to. So if that's okay, are you okay if I keep it going?
Yeah. First one, I just wanted to hear, space for potentially Brantly expressing remorse for this. I think that's something that, we can, give a space for.
Sure. But then, the governance forum is still accessible, and okay. Kind of irrespective of what happens on Twitter. And I would definitely encourage, there is a link pinned to the space, which links to the governance forum, which I'd encourage everyone to check out. Okay, Gloria, would love to hear from you.
Yeah. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I am shaking, so I apologize for that right now. But I think in general, it's very discouraging. What Brantly said was off the charts ridiculous, and the first words out of my mouth were "what the fuck." How do you have someone with so much power say such things, and then have a community that has people from all different walks of faith contributing to a project, and still not even have the cognitive ability to realize wait, these people are also working in the community. So my first thought wasn't how can we keep like the ENS space like token high or anything like that. It was how do you keep the people who are working on this project safe? That should be our first mode. And you're working like in Web3, we have people who are authentically themselves. Like, you know, you have transgender people, you have women of color, you have people of all walks of faith that are struggling with everything in their own daily lives every single day, and then still showing up to be your contributors. And so when you have someone say that, what was said, you know, even under the blanket of religion, which is bogus, then you're like, what are the mechanisms that are in place in order to keep contributors safe? And I think that should be like one of ENS's focus. It's like, how are you keeping your community safe? How do we make this an authentic place for people, or an inclusive place for people to show up authentically and still contribute in their ways? Because people who are people who are targeted, when they feel the oppression, they're not going to produce their best work. So yeah, if you can't be your authentic selves with your colleagues or your friends, then you're just like feeling crappy. But second of all, we should be concerned with the mental health of our neighbors and our communities. And if you're creating a spot where, you know, it's if you've never had a kid come into you and tell them like they don't feel safe in their own bodies, and that they have so many people targeting them, and then trying to be showing up for a work or project and then feeling targeted in your workplace, like how can you just not be humane? And the thing for me that was really offensive too afterwards was not that Brantly was called out, was just the smugness of his response, that he was so egotistical to be like okay with the mob coming out there. If someone had said that something I said was homophobic or racist or bigoted, I would want to figure out what I said and be like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be that person. But to be okay and be relishing in it is a totally different type of thing. And so I think there's a bigger problem there, because you have someone who has a lot of power, who has a lot of vocality, saying these things with the blanket of religion to communities that are already targeted and are readily struggling just to find their space in a regular 3D world, not alone a Web3 world. So we have to really start to have an inclusive lens on that. And then to all of those who were targeted and think that religion stands on this, I just know that I serve a God who thinks that you're fearfully and wonderfully made. You're beautiful in the skin you are, and that you have a purpose here too, because there's no reason why someone should say such a thing to any type of person. And I'm like shaken right now that people are worried about people's productivity rather than them as a whole person themselves. So that's it.
Thank you, Gloria. I think that this like is really anchoring, and I think the word to take away from this is safety. And to if safety isn't your go-to word, then congratulations, you're privileged. At least in some sense. And so I think I really appreciate that focus on just like a baseline of safety. Okay, Elise.
Hi there. I think Madame was before me. I will admit that.
Oh, okay. In.
Yeah. Thank you, Gloria, for those words. You got me tearing. You know, it's interesting because I am both, like, I am Black, queer, and trans, right? So like, whoo, triple big, you know, big three, big hitters, right? And for me, like, my initial response is strength, right? So when these things happen, it's like strength. It's like, and you cannot let people destroy the vision you see for your future, right? You cannot afford tears. You cannot afford sadness, because you have to build something that will include the people who come after you, right? So for me, my initial response is like bravery and strength, and it is, I will be the voice, I will be the strength, I will push, and I will make change for the future. But Gloria, you kind of unlock the sadness of like, I am tired of having to show up with identity and constantly be attacked and minimized, and you know, just like given this narrative of like, I literally don't exist, or I am evil. And for me, I think if you're building inclusive community, if that's someone's personal belief, sure, but the community cannot tolerate that. Because if the community tolerates that, exactly what Gloria said, that leads to suicidality, that leads to mental illness, that leads to people not being able to produce what they want. So at the end of the day, if we allow in community people who do not accept everyone in community, then it's not really a community. And I think ENS is going to have to contend with the fact that, like, if there are people in the community that think it's okay to say these things, then it's not a true community, and it's not holistic community. It is a fragmented community. And then, Alisha, I don't envy your task at all as the community person at ENS, because what's going to fall on your shoulders is, what is the real ENS community? Who is in the real ENS community? What are our code of conduct, right? All those things are now launched into effect. And you, as the leader of community, you have to make a decision about what the community is. And then not everyone's going to agree with that, clearly, but that's the decision of community, right? It's that, what are we standing for as the community of ENS, as the official community of ENS? And if you stand for, inclusion of trans and queer people, and trans and queer people saying I do not feel included, then that falls on you to change the community to make them feel included, right? And like, for me, as like the community leader at Wonder, if people want to check that out, it's in my bio, but like, as a community leader at Wonder, I would never have tolerated anything like this from the leadership of the company. If they did, I would have been like, it's either we're a homophobic transphobic company and that's what the T is and I'm leaving, or we aren't and I'm staying, right? Because as the community person, we are leadership of community, where people are looking to us to say, what does this company believe in? What does this organization believe in? And like, at least my experience at Wonderverse, the only reason I took that job is because from the jump, they had an LGBT channel, right? They had a Woman in Wonder channel. They had it explicitly included everybody. So that's the only reason I took that job, is because I knew from the jump everyone was included. So like, I don't know. I don't know what the solution for ENS is going to be, but like, I want to believe in the power of us to collectively get together and build something better and build something more beautiful. And like, if Web3 is any semblance of the real world, right? Like, look at everyone on the stage, look at everyone in these rooms, like, look at everyone who I follow. Like, there are so many amazing people here that can build something new, right? There's no reason in this Web3 space that we have to continue to allow queer, homophobia, queerphobia, transphobia, sexism, patriarchy, white supremacy. There's no reason anymore. There's enough of us. There's enough of collective action that we don't have to stand for it. And we can take our labor elsewhere, and we can say, no, you don't get my labor. No, you don't get to just, be here and like, take advantage of my brilliance. No, you lose me, right? Because you didn't stand for me. But I want to let Elise go. You actually were before me, Elise. So, but thank you. I appreciate you telling me to go ahead.
Honestly, I try to use my privilege for good. But thank you for that. And I, to be honest with you, I really thought you were up next. But, listen, racism, xenophobia, transphobia, homophobia, it is a liability, okay, for discrimination. It is dangerous. And no matter what type of protocols you put in place, no matter what type of things you say, that kind of smugness, that kind of dismissal that he portrayed and he gave and he showed us, shows us that it is dangerous, the type of power that he holds. And when you have that type of power, you hold a lot of responsibility. You hold a lot of accountability, right? And great leaders are empathetic. They are personably developable. They're humble in a way where they can recognize that they need to change or to grow or to evolve, right? They have ethical thinking. They have the ability to really understand different cultures, right? So with that being said, that is why he is not in the position he should be in. Okay. And I'm not in the position to tell people what to think, because I don't have control over that. The only person I have control over is me at the end of the day. And the great part about this brand new world that we are in is that our wallets get to act as our voice. And my voice right now means that I get to vote, I get to delegate, I get to say what I think and what I want. Because thank you, Alisha, for doing this, because this is this new world we are in right now. This is the test, y'all. This is the test. Here it is. Because is it going to work? Is the DAOs, is the rules, is the things we have decided at this point, is this really what's going to happen? So I'm really more excited than ever to really, really see if this new world is going to work the way we want it. Because if it does, I'm really excited because this is the way it should be. Because I believe in the blockchain. I truly do. And I'm not going to give up just because there's racists or transphobes or homophobes, because I've never given up otherwise. So we prevail.
Thank you so much, Elise. Colton, Underwood.eth.
Yeah, hello. First, just obviously, thank you, Elise, Madam, Faith, for your guys' voices, stories, and what you guys have said. This is like super similar to one of you guys shared. It's like obviously triggering in many ways for me growing up Catholic, but also, recently in the past year coming out and then being part of this community too. This is sort of like the first time that I felt, not like, actually, yeah, I'll just say like disappointed. You know, I joined, the Web3 NFT community, and I've seen positivity and so much welcomeness and diversity, and that's what's been so cool about this space. So then to sort of see this and have, watch it unfold and hear people, even in this space come up and say, well, it's freedom of speech, and freedom of speech does not equivalent to hate speech and what's going on. And I know it's obviously triggering to a lot of people coming out or people who are already out, but also my brain and goes to all the kids in this space too, who are struggling with identity, who are trying to figure themselves out, who found safety, found people that they like in this space, and finally felt safe. And then all of a sudden this happens and they take 5, 6, 7, 10 steps back because we don't handle it the right way. So now that we're in this position to hold a space like this, I just hope, obviously ENS, I hope you guys realize the responsibility in this that you have, not only for the community that is already out and proud and trying their best to represent, but also for the future of not only the NFT space and crypto space, but just humans first. So anyway, I'm going to get off the stage because there's a lot more people up here more qualified to talk about this than me, but I just wanted to share that as somebody who's new to both spaces. I love you all, and I appreciate your guys' voices, and I love listening to this conversation.
Thank you, Colton. ZK Bish.
Yeah, I love everything that's being said here, and I'm glad for all the different voices that are coming up. First of all, I just want to say that I think it's important to be listening to the really difficult aspects of this conversation and how we're navigating it in this environment. It's Web3 ultimately is a human project, right? It's something we're trying to build, and we're trying to figure out what it means to be better humans by using this technology to coordinate us towards that goal. So with that said, I mean, I think the thing that this has really shown me more than anything else is that this entire project, like the entirety of Web3 and what it means to be human, is finally becoming something that is more reflective of what makes the most sense for humans, which is to be accepting and open to things. There's a lot of theory that backs up the idea of diversity being something that is fundamental to the growth of systems. And ultimately, closed-minded systems don't survive. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. So I think that ultimately the thing that I am kind of elated to see happen here is we're going to get to see these systems of coordination actually be put to work. And the outcome that will come of this backlash, whatever it may be, is going to be a result of that coordination. So I think y'all want to take heart in that. There's a lot of really important conversations happening. And I mean, ultimately the result is going to be the proof of the technology's utility. So, I mean, I spent a lot of this weekend kind of spiraling, and I know a lot of other people have as well, because it's traumatizing to have to deal with, trying to exist in a space where, for the most part, a lot of us are trying to get away from what it is that identity imposes upon you through pseudonymity and anonymity and privacy and the ability to go and exist like wholly as yourself within a digital space. And so now to be encountering something that is just a reflection of a very old ideology that's kind of like closed. Hopefully the technology that we're using is going to prove the right way of moving forward here. So I don't know. That's the main thing I want to underline here is you have the ability to delegate. You have the ability to determine how the technology that surrounds you and that you're building and the direction it goes from a community perspective, from a technical perspective. We're building these things. This is a human project. And so we get to determine what happens next. And so just take that in your heart. You know, ultimately, the damage that comes out of situations like this is a lesson. And I hate that trauma has to be such a cruel teacher, but that's what we'll get out of it, is lessons and ways to learn and ways to adapt and ways to build better.
Thank you. Thank you, CK Bush. I can see that Limes.eth has his hand up, so I'll probably go Limes, Brad.eth, I know you've been on the stage for a while, Daylon, and then I really want to bring, there's like a bunch more people, there's so many people, so if we can kind of just like cycle through that, Limes.eth.
Hey everybody, if you haven't heard from me before, I'm Limes.eth. I'm a community steward for the ENS DAO. I really appreciated hearing everyone's voices today, and I enjoy hearing all your opinions. It's been really helpful. There's been a lot of talk of Brantly's intolerance of marginalized communities like LGBTQ and among other things. And so my question is, in your opinions, anyone who's up here or wants to come up here, what's the difference between Brantly's intolerance and our intolerance towards Brantly? And that's a sincere question. I really want to hear from anyone up here. Yeah.
Elizabeth, is your hand up in response to Limes?
Yes. Thank you, Alisha. Limes, are you for real? I mean, this moralizing with two wrongs don't make a right. You know what? One wrong doesn't make a right either. I mean, between you and Chris, y'all are just going to give us all a heart attack. Seriously, I'm not lying. Like, you have no earthly idea what you're talking about when you say something that's senseless. And I'm not usually one to come up here in public and dress people down, but what are you thinking? What are you thinking? Like this,
I don't know if that's still. I mean, I think he's coming from an okay place.
You know
if he's
what,
going,
Hudson? I don't need you to speak for him. Number one, and what we're not going to do is talk over Black women in this room. That's what we're not going to do.
Totally fair.
And I'm
go
finished.
right ahead.
Feel free to jump in. I think the Trump years have inured people to the idea of false equivalence. There is no equivalence here, none whatsoever. So stop trying to fabricate one. Now, Hudson.
I might just go to, sorry, Hudson, can I just go to Gloria first, please?
Oh, sure. Feel free.
Yeah. Okay. So I think in general, there's two suggestions I'm going to have. Because Lions is now comparing the two as if they're equivalent, I would probably suggest that the stewards or the leaders in the ENS group take like a how to be an ally and a diversity inclusion course, just so that you can understand the difference between a targeted group and an oppressed group. So if you can understand what an oppressed group is or the power dynamics that are in place there, then you would understand the difference per se of one group being targeted when they're from a powered group and one group being targeted when they're in an oppressed group. So my suggestion would definitely be to get like an actual like certified diversity inclusion person to talk about just oppressed groups and like privileged groups, because there's needs to be a clear understanding that we don't all have the same access to all the same tools or even thoughts or speech or even ideology. And the other side of it is like we really shouldn't be looking towards those who are the oppressed group to educate those who are in the privileged group on why their privilege should or should not let them be able to have, whatever the oppressed group is also experiencing. But it's much more painful from the oppressed group to be explaining it because they do not have the access to the power that the privileged group has. And there's a lot of different types of privileges. I would strongly encourage you to look into it.
Thanks, Gloria.
Thank you.
Madam Collated, I saw you.
Yeah, I jumped back up because like I built a global diversity inclusion program at like a very conservative company, and like I just feel like quite qualified to like help you because like it's like it depends what you want this space to be. Do you want this space to be a space that centers marginalized voices who've been affected, or do you want it to be a space for people to get educated about like these systems? And those are two very different spaces. So like if you want it to be a space that's like, and also Natrix, hey, including sex workers and kinksters as well. I keep forgetting about that, centering myself, apologies. But like, I think that you have to make a decision like early or now or even before you make a room, Alisha, of like what you want this to be. So then like you can say, hey, Limes, I appreciate that question, but that's not what we're doing here right now. Because like, Limes can ask that question, but if there's queer and trans and sex workers and women and everybody in this room looking at ENS for like a empathetic and compassionate and like kind of like a stance of how they respond to this stuff, then like those are not the questions that need answering. Those are like questions for a different space or for people to go into the ENS Discord and have a separate conversation. So like I just want to come back up because like I was like, yikes.
I appreciate everyone's feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, just gonna real quick apologize to Elizabeth for interrupting. That was totally not right, and yeah, I apologize. And I think that yeah, I really like what Gloria said. I was also just jumping up here to just say a quick couple of things, but Alisha, is there other people who need to speak before me or like changing subjects?
You can go ahead, Hudson, and then we'll. I'm just also bringing a couple more people up, but go ahead.
Sure. So I think something that like, because people talk about like, oh, he hasn't Brantly hasn't actively harmed or like shown whatever kind of like actions towards the people that he says are evil. And I think what's being missed is not like direct things like, oh, he's, said a slur, or like things that like people would automatically be like, oh, that's universally bad too, or most people is bad. It's more like I can see, years down the line as ENS grows and becomes more mainstream, there being an issue with, someone who's like an awesome developer and they're trans, or, and they want to join a project and they look and they see that the director of operations, who likely has some say in the hiring process, literally views that type of person as evil. So I guess it'd be different if like, yeah, his views weren't so publicly espoused, I think, and like so direct and like totally doubling down on it in the last 24 hours. But in the current state, it's going to like limit ENS's ability to hire good devs from that marginalized group or their allies. And it also like when the mainstream comes in more and more, this is going to come up over and over again. He's not deleting the tweet. So this is going to be a recurring issue. So if you care about ENS, I don't think he needs to be in a position of being a public face of it.
Yeah, thanks, Hudson. Natrix, Crypto Natrix.eth.
Hey, thank you. Can you hear me?
Oh, you just like cut out a little bit, but we can hear you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, got you.
So yeah, I wanted to come up here. Honestly, his comments weren't shocking to me, but what's been a little upsetting to me is that sex workers have been completely excluded from the whole conversation, despite like him mentioning masturbation and porn and like the fact that sex workers are at the intersection of all of these groups that we're talking about, right? Like, I think it's really important that, like, I get it that there's not a lot of us in this space, but this is why there's not a lot of us in this space. And Christian views like his, or that are like disguised as being religious. Like, this shit is the reason why like need Web3. They're lobbying to get us kicked out of Web2. So like, it's really, really important that we're centered in these conversations. Yeah, so I just like, I'm saying this as like the most outspoken sex worker in this space who's been dealing this for a while. So that's why I'm saying it, because I'm like, have the ability to say it, and get up here and do it. But it's, I this is the thing that doesn't get discussed, and like, most people are afraid to approach this topic, and we're at the intersection of all of these groups, and if you really, really want like a change, then our voices need to be centered as well. And I hope that moving forward we can all remember that. And yeah, that's basically what I wanted to say. And yeah, this isn't like, I'm not trying to like yell at people, it's just like, it's important to remember.
Yeah, I think I'm really grateful that you jumped into the space and up onto the stage, Natrix, because I feel like this is part of the solution. There are real heartbeats under all of these, labels. And so I think, I am really grateful just for you speaking up and coming up here. Okay, so Mike Mongo, I know that you've been waiting a while, especially requesting to speak, and then I will go to Naravi and Healing Visions, if that's okay. Mike?
Blessings, Alisha. Thank you. Thank you very much for staging this space. This room, after listening to this unfold for about 18 hours, I think, is the most nuanced and layered conversation I've heard yet, and it is a challenging conversation, because it does bring up so many things for us. On the way, like how we just incorporated kink and sex workers into this conversation, and that is important, and that is not that's not my ordinary go-to. And then how it was just brought and put in front of us, like, these are ways forward for all of us, and that is yesterday. This is why I'm speaking now, and it is when I was in the room last night when Brantly Millegan was speaking and was given a voice. It seemed like in a room just for the clout. It seemed that kind of room, and the conversation was people working to enroll this figure into this person into a right way of thinking, or a more heartfelt, thoughtful way of thinking and way of being. Their argument was drawn from not necessarily a principled position, but an intellectual one, that this is freedom of speech, and the way that Lime just a moment ago made the equivocation of this position and what's the difference between this position and this position, and there is no question that there is a difference. The one is the one position when a person is espousing hate or hurt in a way that will engender or foster hate and hurt, is different than people putting blocks up or working to try and stop a person from creating hate and hurt in the way that those words can. Because when a sentence like homosexuality is evil comes out, like right on the surface, right at the front door, what that does is it empower people in places where people all over the world to hurt other people who think that is okay. There are places in the world where people who are homosexual or homosexuals will be put, that it's against the law with a penalty of death.
Mike, in the US too, it's not just abroad, it's everywhere.
It is everywhere. It is everywhere. It is everywhere. And there are people all over the United States who cannot espouse their identity, and they are thoughtful, loving, compassionate, intelligent, wonderful human beings. And this is why it becomes this, like, the emotions come up for this, and yet there is this part, and it was Elise who I got to hear speak a moment ago, and she said this matterful fine point and that it appears that there is a way to extract Brantly Millegan that we have built into this system that we're creating, this organization, this way of doing commerce called Web3, a way to extract that. We have it built into the system. I have it built into ENS, built into the DAO. And when I look at it this way, that there is a way forward and that we can do this without in the way that is non-traditional, because DAOs and all of this is new to us. And so when we are able to use our as ENS holders and use our choice to delegate, to choose our delegates, if I understand correctly, that is the way forward to remove Brantly Millegan. And it seems to me that this is a test for what we are doing here. It seems like this is a practicum, that it shows us how to do it, that we're all learning, and that as we are learning, that we can just share with one another how to do this. Because DAOs are not synonymous with corporations. They are an evolution of business. And Web3 is an evolution of business. Web3 is just not about the web. It is about removing the scarcity from people's lives, creating abundance. And that is scarcity is I say all the time, scarcity is a very fun game to play when it's a game, when it's an NFT, when we're doing that. But it is not a fun game when people don't have enough in their cupboards or don't even have a cupboard to put anything in. And that is what Web3 is about. It's about making it so that this is the world where everything works out for everyone all the time without harm to anyone. And that is what's possible here. And if I understand correctly, what I haven't heard yet is the way forward to implement the structure of the organization to remove Brantly without the emotions that we feel in this space. I am really, really right there. I have my friends know that I'm 57 years old, and that when I was growing up, that there was two ways of being. There was everyone, and there was pervert. That was it. And I know what all of the worst, what to be called was the worst thing. There was no bisexual, there was no gay, there was no lesbian, there certainly wasn't transgender. And we have moved forward into this place, into this world. And it looks to me like this, where there is a place for all of us, for everybody in this room, from the person who just entered to everybody here up on stage. And in the space, on my very first room, when I went to talk about this, I went and talked with young people to acknowledge them, to let them know that this is what we are doing. And though this is a struggle, to bear witness to this. My friends who are building companies in Austria are telling me about their friends who are in their 20s who can't tell their parents that they're gay, as if that's a thing to hide. And that my family is from Jamaica, and there are people, and there are, if you are gay or lesbian in Jamaica, it is often a death sentence. And so this person, I don't have an issue. I don't have a relationship with Brantly Millegan. All I want to know is, what is the method to remove them? Is it a consensus? Do we get to work in that way? What is the specific mechanism so that I can learn it here and then communicate it to all the people in my community and all my friends, so that they know how to do it? I don't need to hurt Brantly Millegan. I just need him removed, so that we can move on and learn how to do it, so that when we encounter this situation again, which we will, that we know how to do it next time. That's it. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. And so this post, the ENS.eth post that is pinned at the top of the space, if you click into the link, it takes you to the governance forum, which is, I would definitely encourage everyone to make an account on the governance forum, and it kind of steps through the options, and that there will be a proposal put to the DAO about next steps. And I would say the first step is thinking about the delegated voting power of your ENS tokens if you're an ENS token holder, and doing that with intention. And so you can go to withtally.com to redelegate. That's the first step. And then the second step I would encourage people to do is, like I said, sign up to the forum, have an account, so that you can kind of participate in the discussion. And then if you have delegated voting power, whether and you can delegate to someone else or yourself, then you will be able to participate in voting on proposals that will be put to the DAO. I imagine, like in the next, like within the next couple of days, after it goes through the forum, and then that snapshot vote will. I mean, the proposal should lay this out. I imagine it will be a social proposal, which means that kind of the snapshot vote is the final stage of that proposal, and then kind of there will be consequences of the outcome of the votes on that proposal.
Alisha, do you know how long that process will take?
So a snapshot vote is up for 5 days, and so normally the proposals that go through the forum, they have like at least 24 hours between being going through like temp check and a draft proposal. But I imagine that I'm on a different time zone to everyone, but like in the next 24 to 48 hours, I imagine that within the forum it will be clear whether there is an active proposal that is going to be put forward, and that pinned post is where that will be discussed.
That's awesome. Thank you. What's funny is that while I was up here, somebody tweeted at me, "We get it, you're gay, let the non-white people speak." And I just want to just correct someone that's like, first of all, I'm bisexual, FYI, there's a difference. And secondly, because my skin is light, please don't make an assumption about who I am or what my background is. And that's true for all of us. We don't know anything about someone until they ask. So I appreciate, Alisha, that the help you just gave. I can carry that forward. Thank you. I'll sing that song.
Thank you, Mike. Nara V, thank you so much for your patience. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no, thank you for having me up here, Alisha, and thank you for holding this space. I think this is a very important discussion. I actually had a space last night discussing this, and everybody was pretty civil, so I was grateful that there was an open narrative there. What I wanted to put in, towards this discussion is that regardless of anybody's beliefs, like I'm not here to hate on anybody. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I respect where you're coming from. However, there's a difference between, putting your beliefs out there and hate speech. And what a lot of people were put off by was his response, like, "Oh, I have a mob now. Look at the first word in my bio." That was very dismissive. That wasn't taking accountability. I think it was a very poor representation of, him in his position for ENS. ENS has done beautiful things for this space, and it's a shame that this has to be associated with it, right? And so I feel that shows a lot of his character, how he chose to respond in that tweet. There was no accountability, no apology, nothing like that. And this space, the NFT space, is all about liberty. That's what we're doing here. We're moving forward, and we are helping others rise with us. And things like this is going to weigh us down. Things like this narrative is going to keep us, weighed down to a point where we're not able to evolve. And that's what this whole entire space is about. So I just want to put it out there, like, regardless of your beliefs, regardless of who you're around and what, your church or anybody has told you, just be mindful of how you interact with other people, especially if you have influence, especially if you have a big audience. Be mindful of the things that you say, because everybody's dealing with things. Everybody has so much on their plate, right? Why do we have to add to that? And why do we have to add to whatever they're already, going through at the moment? I was really upset when I saw this. I actually saw the tweet because a friend of mine, Fuck Render, retweeted it, and he was pretty upset. He said, I'm burning all my ENS stuff, and like, I understand why he would come from that position. I truly hope moving forward that there will be something that will be done for the community, to make up for this. I don't know, honestly, unfortunately, I don't know if this will ever be forgotten by people in the public. I think it'll be associated with ENS for a long time. But I'm hoping that moving forward, there will be a good example set so that others in this space can feel safe to speak, to be who they truly are, to continue to be liberated in their expression. And yeah, that's really all I want to say. I'm really coming from a place of love. And I just hope for anybody listening that, you know, when you see these things, yeah, I understand if you're angry and you want to, like, you know, attack back. But at the same time, that's where that person is at within their own consciousness. And the best thing that we can do is lead by example, right? And hope that others will rise with us. So I just want to say thank you. I'm sending so much love to everyone in this space. Thank you for holding an open discussion.
Thank you so much, Nara. Healing Visions. Thanks for your patience.
Of course. I really liked what Mike and some of the other people had to say. I'm going to talk really quick because I don't think some people understand, you know, basically how triggering just homosexuality is evil can be. This is going to be a trigger warning for anybody that has issues with suicide or depression. So if you do, I'm going to give a couple seconds before I talk on, and then, you know, feel free to mute or, you know, turn this off. But basically, when I was about 18 years old, I'm a lesbian and I'm out, and I have been my whole life. My family's been very supportive. My sister had a friend who was bisexual. She saw that I was living my life out. She came home to her parents and she came out to them. They said homosexuality is a sin. And again, trigger warning for anybody that's sensitive. She went to the playground down the street and she hung herself. I also lost my uncle at 50. He was gay bashed and beat up by people that thought homosexuality was evil. They felt that they could dehumanize him. And so I lost him to suicide because he had a lot of depression because he didn't feel like he fit into this world. He was a different generation than me and he had it a lot harder. So those words are actually very dangerous. And even if you're not physically killing someone, you are hurting someone. It hurt me. I am a mom. I have a wife and I have 2 children. If they had seen homosexuality as evil and they asked me what that was, and they thought maybe, oh, my parents are evil, there's something wrong with their love, that's a problem. We can't have somebody that hurts people in this position. He should not be a community leader. It's not inclusive. And we are not hurting him. We are asking to remove him because he is hurting others. I posted something to respond to, I can't remember his name. He asked earlier, what's the difference? There's a huge difference. We cannot tolerate intolerance. I respect other people's religion. This is not a religious issue. I myself am religious. I think that spirituality is beautiful. What I don't think is beautiful is dehumanizing or calling other people evil just because you don't understand or necessarily agree with their life. There is nothing wrong with loving other people. And I'm sorry to get so intense, but I think people don't understand what gay people, trans people, sex workers, and others, BIPOC women, BIPOC people in general deal with on a daily basis because they're privileged and they don't have to deal with it. I myself am white cis, so I actually have it better than a lot of folks, but just the fact that I'm lesbian, I am marginalized and it is hurtful. I'm going to leave the space so other people have to speak, but I also think it's very disturbing how other people in leadership haven't taken this seriously, but I'm also trying to be patient that maybe they have not seen the violence specifically themselves and maybe they need to be educated. It is painful for me to educate other people because it brings up very strong trauma, but I'm doing it because I think that this space needs to understand the hurt that it caused.
Yeah, thank you so much, Healing Visions. Really, really appreciate you sharing, and given the trauma that it brings up for you, and that know that it is not something that, just your vulnerability should, I really am grateful for it. Okay, big blackcrypto.ust. I know you've been up here, and then Whisk, I'll come to you. Oh, and hands up, sorry. And did you want to respond to something that Healing Visions was just saying?
No, you can. Scott was next. So I was just gonna speak about like my perspective on what Web3 is, but that can wait till other people go.
Okay, cool. Okay, sorry, Scott, and then Big Black Crypto. I'll come to you next. Hey, Scott.
I'll just be very brief. I just wanted to really just echo what's being said. I personally find it, very challenging to talk about, any kind of queer identity in Web3. Definitely, I think has a history of being not quite as inclusive as I think, the narrative might set it out to be. And I do think that's improving a lot in especially the last couple of years, but it's clear that there's still a lot of work to be done. And I just wanted to really echo some of the points that were mentioned about both the paradox of tolerance, I think not being able to tolerate intolerance, but also just the responsibility aspect of this, where I think, when you are a community leader, you have to be able to, speak for the communities that you serve. And I think that, unfortunately, it seems like Brantly is very unwilling in this case to do that. So I think I'm just very disappointed and just sort of like saddened by this whole thing. And I don't have a lot of other stuff to add, but I just wanted to say that, this is an important issue for a lot of people. And I think that it sounds like there is a process that's being followed on the forums. And I just hope that people will take a look there and give some thought to, how we sort of take ownership over this situation. There's a lot that can be done. And I think that's one of the beautiful parts of Web3. And I think that's just really important for us to consider.
Thanks so much, Scott. Big Black Crypto. Do you want to unmute?
Hi there. Thank you for allowing me a chance to speak. I was kind of shocked because I was handling my own thing here in Toronto, because out here we've got a little bit of how can you describe it? Similar sentiments. Seizing capitals from Toronto to Ottawa, and it's not so much the him not wanting to change his stance. He can keep his stance. I'm not here to like take anything from him. However, what I am going to seek and request is that, to some extent, business be returned to operations. Like when it comes to business, I do my best to remove myself of certain emotions. I can't lie, I am hurt. I can't hide who I am. I look in the mirror, my beard is long, I'm a Black German, and it's very difficult when, these ideologies are also, to some extent, I'm not tying it to the religion, but I'm just talking about the sentiments of which these perspectives born extremism that, us, like not us, but I'll say for myself in particular, I'm going to only speak for myself, but it's something we, like me as a minority, and I know I'm not alone in this sentiment. I have to live like this. I have to walk past dump trucks blocking intersections so this, hospital care doesn't get stopped. I'm having to, invoke Five Eyes Treaty Acts so Ottawa can somehow show a sense of force. And only after the fact, now it's declaring a state of emergency, despite having a citizen like myself laying out the groundwork. So frankly, I don't care if Brantly chooses to speak. I don't need to hear his voice. His silence is enough for me. I only respect leadership if he was, I don't even care if he was selected as a leader. Leaders lead. I've already gotten rid of one Conservative Party leader. You can look it up. He's gone. And I just don't affixate my person, my brand to someone who doesn't seem to understand the hurt that he's caused. Fine, keep your views, but don't expect to keep your title or your role. I encourage, leadership to take it amongst themselves when they get a chance, review whatever process is necessary. Because like for me, I've had I can't have .eth in my name now. I can't push forward with a deal that I want to broker. I got an entire EVM's line of .eth names, and I was going to try to use that as a way to broker them into Web3 and introduce them to .eth and the whole sphere of wealth walking in the open on Twitter. I don't know how I resume that, and I don't know what that time frame looks like, whether that's 6 months or 8 months from now. And it's killing me because they just did 30,000 orders. They've got order requests of of expressed interest of 2.27 billion, but they've got 30,000 confirmed orders. And I can't move forward because of this. So I just wanted to put that out there from a whole perspective. And if anybody's going to challenge me on these perspectives, I'm not like interested in that, because for me, I'm not just speaking from one perspective. I get inundated with people trying to tell me what I'm thinking when the conversation isn't linear. Like, we look at crypto wallets, we look at all these different blockchain interactions, and we see how things map and connect, and it's very spatial. I encourage you to think beyond yourself and acknowledge the different layers of complexities and how there's an intersectionality we often don't look at. So this is what I bring to the conversation. I thank everyone for their time. I wish everyone much warmth, and thank you. And I hope we can heal and move forward. And in time after healing, business operations can be better. Thank you.
Thank you. Big Black Crypto. Whisk, hey.
Hi, I think Madame had their hand up. Do
Oh,
you
yeah,
want
sure.
just I think it's important that they probably lead the conversation here, but I'd love to speak next.
Sure. In.
Yeah, so thanks to everyone for believing in my leadership abilities and just abilities to be a voice of this conversation. It really is it's inspirational to me as an individual. And the thing I want to add to the conversation as a framing is that for me, and this was actually something that came out, was not my original idea, from a Gitcoin library event about marketing. And I see Ben's in the audience, and I maybe you can retweet the tweet. I forgot the guy's name, but basically he was like, blockchain is the how, Web3 is the why. In my discourse on Twitter, I have been making it very oppositional between crypto and Web3 intentionally. Because for me, the why of blockchain is not crypto. The why is Web3. And when I say Web3 as the why, what I mean is that for me, Web3 is social, political, economic revolution. And it is not just business as usual. A lot of my frameworks has been inspired by, books like Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, who's an indigenous biologist, who talks a lot about reciprocity and indigenous practice of commerce, and how it was about emotionality. It was about how we feel. Business was about our material realities and about empowering each other. So for me, Web3 is political. Web3 is economic. Web3 is social. So for me, the arguments that Brantly and a lot of others kind of lobby, I say yes. This is the space to have these conversations, because at the end of the day, this is for me political, social, and economic. Right? This is about my humanity and my identities. It has never not been that for me. The reason I left my field of, my original field of chemistry and went to Web3, because I wanted to make the world better for people like me. I wanted to make the world better for Black women and for sex workers and for queer and trans folks and the intersection of all those beautiful identities, and for disabled people and for everybody. I wanted to build something that was going to economically empower everyone. So for me, this is political. And I have never shied away from that. And so for me, if the why of ENS is Web3, then ENS needs to act like that is the why. If the why is crypto, then ENS should act in that way. If the how is ENS is a foundational protocol that is going to just be technological and have no social, political, or economic component to it, then that is also the T, right? So it's about defining these things. So for me, I am in Web3 for the express purpose of liberation of the peoples that I hail from. And I will always pursue that regardless of where I am. And the things I associate myself with should also push for that liberation, no matter how hard or how controversial, how complex, or how painful that may be. I'm here to reimagine the world. And I'm here to reimagine the world as a Black, queer, trans person who's lived this crazy, complex life. That is why I'm here, expressly. So I just want to say, for me, that is Web3. Web3 is inherently queer, is inherently trans, is inherently woman, is inherently sex work, is inherently, indigenous. it's inherently those things. So there is no Web3 for Brantly, right? When he admitted, when he was uncovered, and then he confirmed his homophobic, sexist, anti-sex worker, transphobic, homophobic, all those opinions. When he doubled down and said, "This is who I am," I said, "You are not a part of Web3. You can be in crypto, you can be in the blockchain world, but you are not a part of Web3." So for me, that is where I am coming from, and like, that's what I'm here for, is to push that and to try to build a better world for all of us. And if someone doesn't want that, they can have fun building over there, but I don't believe that they will make it. We have this "we're all going to make it" hollowness that Giga Chad's propagated. But of course, when a Black queer trans person, or when women, or when whatever identity you hold that's not the empowered and privileged one, come in, all of a sudden it's "you're not welcome here." And I think that is so funny to see happen in real time. And again, I predicted this, that as Web3 and people diversify the space, those cishet white men in power and privilege are not ready to contend with us. They're not ready. So we have to build, and we have to push, and we have to say, "No, we are here and we are queer." I love that. And build this future we want to see collectively. And I refuse personally to let one person destroy a foundational technology in the space. So I would love to see people express their token delegation and express, this is for us. ENS is a Web3 protocol that is inclusive and diverse, and we will not let one person in leadership or a few people in leadership take it away from us, because we have power and we have authority. And this is a new era where Black women can say freely what they say, where queer and trans people can say freely what they want to say, right? It's our time now. And I personally, or I'll speak for the I personally will not allow it. And I mean, I don't have ENS anyway. I missed that shit. But I will say that, like, some people have said before, in this space, like, we have power here, and we have to really sit in our power and sit in our authority if we want to build a different world where we do have power and authority.
Thank you, Madam Cult Leader. And I can see that Susie has a hand up, but Wes, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'll say something super quick. So I think,
okay, cool.
Madame, like they really elegantly like put that Web3 as kind of like the beating heart of blockchain, and like the sentiment of Web3 is kind of most important, like how we feel, and how we kind of execute off of how we feel. I think really importantly, and Alisha, this is kind of a question I had for ENS, but I think it's important to point out that Web3, or sorry, DAOs really are, parts of them are decentralized. Obviously, most importantly, ENS is decentralized, but there are also aspects of ENS that are centralized. So I think I just have a question around like kind of Brantly's like current position, like how they were hired, but also like any kind of, or if it's possible, Alisha, for you to give us some clarity on like any internal conversations that are happening, because obviously like a lot of responsibility is being placed on the people now to vote, like redelegate their tokens to participate in a vote that's hopefully coming up very, very soon. But like if Alisha, you could possibly, or I think Jordan might have been on here, like if you guys could just give us some clarity on any internal conversations happening, like who directly like you report to. I think Nick Johnson might be someone that you guys like talk to often, but like I just want some clarity on like the centralized aspects of ENS, because I think we should also know kind of what's going on there. Because yeah, I think that's important. But, yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I would say that the kind of distinct like parties or buckets that things fall into there is that there is ENS, the protocol. There is TNL, which is True Names Limited, which is the team that works on the development and maintenance of ENS, the protocol, which was founded by Nick.eth. And so I, like Alisha.eth, am a contractor of TNL. TNL works on ENS, the protocol, which is decentralized. TNL is funded by grants. Every single dollar that from ENS registrations it now goes into the community treasury, and TNL up until this point has been funded completely independently from that registration income. So that's just like one thing. And then there is the ENS DAO. And so in terms of the DAO now has governance powers over the protocol. And so Brantly is a community steward appointed by TNL. So for the first term, and I actually specifically wrote the working group proposal. And so there are 3 out of the 5 stewards in the first term, which is 6 months, are from 3 are elected from the community, and 2 stewards are appointed from TNL, and then in the second term, which is the last 6 months of this year, it would be 1 appointed steward from TNL and 4 elected community stewards. And then next year, in quarter 1, quarter 2, it would be 5 elected community stewards. And that's because TNL are the team that have essentially been managing the ENS protocol since 2016-17. And so I think kind of in reference to like the progressive decentralization thing, but it's not actually decentralization of like any power, it's more like decentralization of operations, I think. And then the delegate situation, Brantly is, I think, the largest delegate of the ENS DAO. And so that means that people who have ENS tokens, whether they were airdropped or purchased on the open market, are able to delegate their voting power. So 1 ENS token equals like 1 vote to anyone. And I just want to say this as well. You can delegate your voting power to any ENS address, not ENS address, any .eth address. And so if you want to delegate to someone, they don't need to have declared themselves to be a delegate in the forum. Like you can delegate to yourself, for example. That doesn't mean that you have to go through the process of being like a public delegate. So I think that's a really important point, and I just want people to know that they can delegate their tokens to anyone, including themselves, that has a .eth address. And yeah, so those are kind of like the buckets of how things work. But Wes, do you want to maybe ask any clarifying questions?
Oh yeah, just generally really quick. I think, yeah, I want it to be clear like what is out of the people's control right now and then what's in people's control. I think that's like kind of the key here. So like what is currently out of the people's control in terms of like how Brantly's position can be changed. I'm just wondering, like, where are the restrictions here? Like, is there anything here that's stopping us from moving forward other than the decentralized aspects, which you just mentioned in regards to delegates and voting?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point, because I also didn't mention that the ENS Foundation has 3 directors, which is a incorporated Cayman company, and Brantly is a director of that company. There is currently if you just like follow this link in the space that's pinned, a proposal to, I think my understanding is to remove Brantly as a director of the ENS Foundation, which is completely within the power of the DAO. Like the DAO is able to do that. As it relates to Brantly's position as director of ops of TNL, I think I'm like I think we actually had a team meeting like now in this hour, so I'm not able to be there, but I will catch up. But so I kind of like I don't know myself right now what the position is there, but I know that Nick has indicated that kind of he is looking to the DAO for instruction kind of on how this plays out.
Great, that is super, super helpful. Yeah, and if you could, like, I don't know if your team agrees, like we'd love like to hear more about like any internal discussions happening, because I think that's also important. I know you're handing all of it over to the DAO, which is great, but like we just want to make sure, I personally would want to make sure that things are moving forward, just internal discussions as well. But yeah, that's my take. Thanks so much for hearing me out.
Yeah, that's cool. So this call that is happening now is actually like the first internal discussion, just we're like very distributed globally. So this is kind of like the first opportunity, I think, that everyone had to be on the same, just like it's on a call. So, but I will, I guess, get an update from that when I get off the space. Yeah. Cool. Okay, Susie. Thanks, Whisk.
Hey. Thank you. just a few things, and always good to see you. Quick question. So you brought up there's a team meeting right now, and I'm wondering if any of those people who make up the team have been in this space at any point.
I think I started it an hour beforehand. I actually, the one place I didn't post it was in the TNL keybase. I defaulted to posting it on Twitter and in Discord. But so I don't know. There's a lot of people in the space, so I haven't seen if anyone's been in the space. And
has anybody reached out to you to say, I heard that, or I saw that something is happening? Are you hosting a space that I can attend?
And I would say that I've that I took okay, wait, stop. So this morning, my time, New Zealand time, there was a call with some of the stewards from the ENS DAO. And so based on that call is when the community stewards discussed removing Brantly as a community steward. There was a conversation about holding a Twitter space. And so I was on that call, Nick.eth was on that call, Makoto, Validator. Yeah, so basically anyone who was in the team who was a steward was on that call. And then I kind of just took the action to do the thing.
Okay. Because part of me, I'm just thinking out loud here. Part of me is it's great that there's a team meeting happening. I'm also thinking about something that to me is very important, which is radical listening, which is, what's more important right now, to have our team meeting or to say, we are here, we are going to continue to be here, we are going to listen, we recognize that there is a problem, we're going to own that there's a problem, and we're going to open up every single channel of communication that we have. My other question to you is, I see that that there's an ENS DAO update that you pinned, and I really appreciate that. Has there been any outreach on a one-to-one level to community members that have been harmed and will most likely continue to be harmed?
I mean, I personally have reached out to people to try to, I just guess, create a space for them to feel like they definitely still are, or they are part of the ENS community. But I would say from a TNL perspective, that I don't think there has been any specific outreach beyond, the personal relationships that I have. And from a DAO perspective, I don't think that's happened either. But I'm also not completely up to date. But yeah, that's kind of where I think things are at the moment.
Okay, I appreciate you just being open and honest and saying what you know and don't know. Because while there's one person that we're talking about, we know that there are many people in these communities that have and will continue to perpetuate harm. And so my first thought is, beyond this person that we are talking about, when I think about community leadership, and when I think about members of the community, could I go to members who are saying, I'm upset, I've been harmed, I'm hurt? Could each of them say, yes, leadership has reached out to me. They asked about my physical, emotional, and psychological well-being. I feel valued, respected, seen, and heard, even though there may not be a resolution as of yet. So that's something that I'm just thinking about. Also wondering, it looks like the ENS, so let me just go back real quick. The ENS update, next steps. it looks like it was posted maybe 3 hours ago. Is that accurate?
I think so, yes.
Okay. I'm curious about, as soon as, so I learned about what was happening through Twitter, and then joined a space where, you know, there were some talks happening, and then, you know, and Brittany and some other people ran another space, and I joined that one. I expected by the time I woke up that there would be something out there, recognizing that the team is on different time zones. So I think I went to bed my time around 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. I'm just trying to be present and listen. And then I, you know, tried to sleep, and probably opened my Twitter app around 9:30 in the morning. And it was like crickets. So I'm just wondering about that as well.
Yeah, I would say that I feel like I'm like just learning what a leadership position is, like in this moment, and that I feel like I can kind of say that I don't feel, even though I am absolutely the community manager for, you know, contracted to TNL regarding the ENS protocol, that that I was like in a position to be the person to make that statement. And but I do feel like that is absolutely something that should happen, that should have happened, and I can definitely acknowledge that in hindsight. And the other thing that I think is, I don't know, that we're just like working through is that, like, even within, say, a team of 10 people, we are all individuals. And so I think that, just like having space for that conversation. And I don't know, it's just like, I know where I am, and so, but that's not potentially reflected by other people. And so I'm not saying whether it is or not, but because I haven't even had those conversations. But so I kind of agree. And I think this is also an interesting part of Web3, which is that if this was a company, you'd just release a company statement, right? And you could speak for the company. But I feel like there is a layer of Web3, which means, and I think this is why, this is what makes, you know, what we're going through feel the way it does, is that there's like it's different here, where like who you are as a person is almost like not, it's like more on par, like more equal than like the company's identity. So I mean, I feel like we're like genuinely, honestly, from like my perspective, like trying to work through it also from a personal level. And but I completely agree that like the best case in the last 12 hours would be to, you know, release some sort of statement from TNL. And I guess this is also the thing, which is like, you know, the person who would normally be in that position to do that is like the person that we're discussing. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I so appreciate you, and I so appreciate your willingness to be open and vulnerable. I have so much respect for you. Something you said really struck me, which is, and I'm just picking out a few words, so I want to own that, which is we haven't had those conversations. And when I think about building from the ground up, I also kind of think about it a little bit like dating. And it's not like I've dated a lot here, so take this with a grain of salt. But you might go on 1, 2 dates, maybe 3, and then you start trying to figure out, you know, where are we going here? What's happening? And eventually you get to a point of, are we values aligned? Because if we're not values aligned, the shit is going to hit the fan quite often, and it's going to cause a lot of hurt for all parties a lot in this, whether it's a monogamous or a polyamorous relationship. And so I'm curious, when you joined the team, Alisha, did you have these conversations? Was this part of the culture that was being created. Because even though you're all separate entities, you're still representative of one entity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would say that for me personally, and just like being in Web3, and I would say like the way that I try to conduct myself is that my actions reflect my values, and that whether I have kind of been like shaving years of my life expectancy over the last 4 months, like for ENS. And part of that is because I think that it's by having people like me in positions to make decisions that things change. And so I guess like whether the values of others on the TNL team with those that I shared, to me, I don't know, it's like it's bigger than that, because as long as I believe in what I believe and I can be in a position to make a difference, then I'll just like I'll be in that environment. So I don't know if that kind of explains it. I think as well, like I will say, like I've had conversations with team members, just like not everyone in the same room. So yeah.
Okay, and then I'm just going to say one last thing, and I recognize that I'm taking up space, but also being somebody who identifies on so many levels, with so many things that are being spoken about. We often aren't given the space, so I'm going to recognize that I am taking up space, but I'm not going to per se apologize for it. I just want to just say to everybody here, and when I first got started learning about Web3, a lot of the narrative that I was being fed, and it was by a particular group of people who kept being asked to speak, kept being asked to be part of podcasts, who kept being noted as leaders in the space, with regards to DAOs and communities, was just, pull yourself together, get yourself a multi-sig and start building. And I think there's a lack of intentionality. I think there's a lack of thought around what does a community of care look like? What does a community of care feel like? And something that should be central, because everything we do is designed, whether we realize it or not. When people say, why is it like this? Because it was designed that way. So one thing, when we think about member-owned communities, whether they're a DAO, whether they're a DORG, which I love and is always pushing on how we think about things, or something else. One of the central design principles should be, is X, Y, or Z, could it potentially cause harm? And if that is central and foundational to everything you do, it's going to change a lot of things. So I really, really appreciate your time. I think it takes a lot of guts to be up here, to be vulnerable. And whether anybody has thought to themselves, am I a leader or not? I think it's just about, what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be better than I was the day before? How am I supporting my personal growth and others? And what can I do better? And being open to that. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Susie. Cobra Commander.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for letting me speak. So I started learning about blockchain because I am in the adult industry and payment processors hate us, platforms hate us. So a lot of us are very quickly transitioning over there. So I wanted to talk about that intersectionality, about sex work or adult entertainment or whatever you're comfortable calling it. sex work is made up of marginalized humans. So minorities, LGBTQ, women, foster children, and orphans, we want to protect these groups of people. At this point, most businesses and banks are not allowed to discriminate against gay people legally as a hate crime. So they're still allowed to discriminate against sex workers, tax-paying legal sex workers. So a bank can refuse service to me as a sex worker based in their morals and ethics. And it's the same clause that used to be for gays, same clause that was used for minorities, and the same clause that was used for women who had to ask their husbands for a credit card in the 70s. Now it's illegal for banks to refuse services to gay people and minorities and women, but not sex workers. Same with platforms and Visa, MasterCard refusing services to us. So society, and now online, is constantly deplatforming and disappearing anyone they deem unworthy of access. So this is tyranny. This is tyrannical total control to disappear humans from existence. And so payment processors are the reason why I got into it, and a lot of technologies started from sex work. Payment processing only exists on the internet because people started buying porn. You can Google it. And so this moral clause has always allowed companies to discriminate against groups of people, but they're not allowed to discriminate against gay people anymore. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Crypto Commander. Really, really appreciate your patience. I know it took me so long to get to you, and coming up on stage. And yeah, I just am. Yeah, it's really interesting for me personally because this feels really straightforward to me, and so this is kind of, I don't know, like the diversity in an ENS space, like this diversity is like literally, I think, what makes this place great, and why the outcome here could be different from what we've experienced. And so, I think that it's such a big part. I mean, sex workers and that entire industry, people who are kind of voluntary or involuntary part of that like life or industry or ecosystem, there is like so much good that can be done here, and I really appreciate you coming up. And I don't know, what I'm trying to say is that I feel like it's potentially like a matter of life and death for some people and their ability, say, to access payments and things like that. And that I really appreciate your perspective, because this isn't like a nice to have thing, right? It's like, I don't know, it's just so much more important than that. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Okay, Duchess Betsy. Thank you again for your patience.
No worries at all. Thank you so much for having this room and for sort of demonstrating in public what it means to actually slalom through this conversation, the implications of what it means, the implications of, personal responsibility, public responsibility. We're kind of interrogating what a DAO is, what Web3 is, all in this moment. So thank you so much for holding this space. And thank you, Susie, for all of the things that you said. Really resonated with me, as did a lot of things that have been said in the space so far. I'm a queer woman of color, And like Elise and others, I think this conversation is about more than ENS. I think it's about how we construct systems that can include everyone. And it's setting a precedent for how we build Web3 generally. I'm sorry, I think someone's mic is on. I don't know. Okay, there you go. I think it's setting a precedent for who we empathize with and whose safety we're the most concerned with. And I've been listening since the beginning of the space, so I've been basically like writing notes in terms of, as people have been speaking. So like Lori and Elizabeth, I think there's a lack of education in the space in terms of how this conversation is being framed. This is not two sides of an argument. I appreciate you, Alisha, in terms of saying this is very straightforward. I spoke in the space last night with Brantly interrupting me to assert that he was being victimized. And I got a lot of messages afterwards that Brantly was being calm and reasonable and that he was being victimized and I was in the wrong. And the thing I said last night was that believing that you as a person should have rights as an LGBTQIA+ person versus believing, as Brantly does, that he has the right to defend his beliefs to oppress others do not and should not get equivalent weight or be upheld as any kind of valid debate. LGBTQIA+ inclusion is not up for debate. And legitimizing oppression is not a debate. So to Chris's earlier statement, if Brantly was the best person for the job, should he not just do the job? The answer is no, unshockingly. Because if you espouse beliefs that do not include everyone having rights, you do not have the skills required to do this job. The last thing I want to say is that people like Limes earlier, I think took the bad faith frame that Brantly put forth and didn't interrogate it. Limes sounds, like a good intentioned person, but someone who is walking through that space takes that frame, doesn't interrogate it because we're lacking some foundational education around inclusion and oppression, as others have said, in some of the rooms that are litigating these conversations and who gets to have rights. The more we give oxygen and platforms to people like Brantly, the more others who are listening silently will walk away and repeat his frame as truth, which is ultimately a dangerous, slippery slope in terms of who we make feel safe and seen in Web3 and how we build this future together. I think we have an enormous opportunity here. I think, me, like a lot of the people here, like I felt like I could show up to this space as a full person, as a whole person, to not have to fractionalize my identity, to come here and share all of the parts that I am, which, are messy and like wide ranging and serious and silly and like, have huge buckets of 25-cent words, and also I like glittering cartoons. Like we can be all of those people in the space. But I think that this moment now is interrogating what we do next. And I think that that's I'm honored to be able to be in this room as part of this conversation. And I'm really interested in what happens next. Because I think like a thing that I've said in multiple spaces, the fierce optimism that I have about this space, sometimes people will throw back, well, that's how people felt at the beginning of, Web 1 or Web 2, the beginning of social media. Look what happened there. And it's because of what happened there that I feel intense and fierce optimism. Because I can look at the beginning of Facebook and I know what happened 10 or 20 or 30 years later. I know that that was a very optimistic tool that got thwarted to topple or near topple democracies. So if I know that, I can reverse engineer that to this moment and say that right now we're standing in that moment, that this conversation is going to have an effect 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now. It is literally going to affect not just people's lives and inclusion in this space. It's going to affect governance going forward. It's going to affect laws going forward. It's going to affect how we communicate, how we build communities, how we build who has access. So, Alisha, I'm both glad that you were taking on this mantle, and I'm sorry that you were taking on this mantle and holding this weight, because I know that basically this is like a little bit fallen at your feet in terms of you holding this conversation. And it's a little bit the weight of the world today and the weight of the world going forward. And I don't, I don't have any particular like last sort of like hammer fall of a thought, other than I'm grateful that we're being kind in this space. And to Susie's earlier point, if we set our compasses to not causing harm, to making sure that people feel included. A lot of intersectional feminism is to making sure that the most oppressed among you feel the most safe, then everyone will be okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Duchess Betsy. Really, really appreciate it. And I think as well, like the thing that I take from this is that there are lots of things that could be next steps, and I know this is a burden, but if you are in a position to post on the forum, to make a suggestion, to help, build out solutions or resolutions, then I really hope that you can find the strength to do it, because I also wonder, like, what does this look like if we say, I don't have to, I get to? Like, I don't know, what does that look like? And so just like with that kind of, looking forward, like you said, and thinking about optimistically how we move forward from this, I just think, I would love to be here in a week talking about the things that have been done and that are in the process of being done, and that, I don't know, I really just, the thing about Web3 that I think is so great is that you can go from talk to action much more quickly than you can in a lot of other frameworks. And so I hope that, the community really leans into that. Okie doke, Tux, how are you?
Hey, pretty well.
Hey.
I just want to come off and just give a few vantage points. It's been great to hear a lot of trans and queer voices on this hangout here. And, I just wanted to bring another trans perspective. As a trans founder in the Web3 space, I'm the founder of Entropy. It's kind of complicated being trans and in crypto. And I just want to give a few, just a perspective on this to kind of let everyone know exactly what, trans and queer people in crypto kind of go through. Typically, like, you understand finance and everything that, kind of bread has always been a boys' club. Really, it's always been a men's club. It's been a group for people to come through and talk about like horrible, fucked up, sexist shit. And the funny part of this is, like, you look at traditional finance. I live in New York City. We see a lot of finance people, and you see exactly how old finance works. And then I compare it to Web3, and I'm like, wow, this is so much more inclusive and so much better than having to be in an environment like that, And it's just a really unfriendly environment for everyone. And to this day, I mean, you join certain spaces as a, queer trans person in crypto, and you see people, say horrific stuff, and it's pretty par for the course. I mean, if you've been on the internet, you're going to see this kind of stuff anyway. But it does infect certain ecosystems in certain places, and it does make it difficult to allow yourself to go to actually participate in those communities. So what happens is, generally you participate in other communities. For trans people, this is something that's like every single day. As a trans person, every single day I will wake up, I look in the mirror, and inevitably there's a voice in the back of my head that makes me hate myself. And it's asking you to like the entire world is essentially asking you to die. So, like, this is not trying to be emotional or anything, but it is literally, as of probably only recently in discourse, the majority position of society has been that we shouldn't exist and that we should kill ourselves. And this is what happens to so many trans youth today. Um, so being trans in crypto is even more difficult because, let's be real, I mean, outside of crypto, it's not super popular. Have you seen the recent discourse lately that crypto has kind of gone under? Is that it's not a popular discourse. We're already kind of not really, I would say, unpopular, but it's controversial. Being a trans founder has gotten me a lot of attention from some of these people, and I have ever since I posted recently on my Twitter about being a trans non-binary founder, I've gotten a shitstorm of just hate. And it's easy to, like, for me, I've dealt with it pretty well over a long period of time, and I've been able to just ignore it and kind of block it off. But it's there. Oh, it's like, it's really, really there. And, people think that we shouldn't exist still and we shouldn't be, building in this space. Now, bringing back like what the discourse is with crypto and everything, in our own communities, being trans and queer, we're being crypto people. Not that we're sort of a marginalized identity being a crypto person, but just to give you an idea, like working in crypto or starting a crypto project already makes you controversial enough for trans and queer people to sort of distance themselves from you. So there's even not a whole lot of space in our own communities for folks like us, because like I said, like it or not, it isn't the most popular thing right now. And, over time, I think that'll change when people realize how much how many benefits, queer and trans people are bringing to, the ecosystem. Like our own communities are kind of telling us that it's like, hey, we want to distance ourselves from you. So to give you like an idea of how crucial and important it is for us in crypto to actually get each other's backs is just massive. Part of the thing about building entropy is just for me has been like, building a place that's safe for, queer and trans people to come work at, because if it's safe for queer and trans people, it's safe for anyone else too. And so what that brings me to my next point, is when we talk about making space for people, we refer to, like, generally people say just, oh, we need to make space for voices and things. What people don't understand is that space is zero sum. That when you take away from something, you give it to someone else. When you take away voices from trans and queer people and you support hate speech, you know, it makes it such that it's much more difficult for trans and queer people to be involved in those spaces altogether. And not only that, but it empowers and magnifies the voices behind that hate speech even more. So even though that there may be this person who has been super supportive and been super amazing and good for ENS and like the future of it, and maybe he's been like actually been really great for the entire ecosystem and community, you have to understand there's a difference between being a super awesome developer and somebody who has a lot of experience building, and there's a difference between being a leader as well. And what we're looking at here is leadership, and we need a group of people to actually act as leaders to be inclusive. And that explicitly means we need to make it's a zero-sum game, and we need to make space for queer and trans voices. And when you say this person in power has been nothing but good, however they have these weird views, all it's going to do is just empower people with those exact hateful views to come and join that space and further push us out of that space already. So keep that in mind. Zero sum. It's just a zero-sum game. That's all it is. That's all making space is. And I want to briefly bring up a point because I'm seeing a lot of discourse on the internet as well, or on Twitter right now, that this is just another incarnation of identity politics, which is funny because I've been an outspoken critic of identity politics. Even as a trans non-binary person, I've been very, very, very outspoken about this and written extensively, both anonymously and on Twitter, about how I don't like identity politics. But let me just be clear here. What is happening today is not identity politics. This is exactly giving space to queer and trans people to voice their opinions about a person in power. And here we are saying, look, we respect you, but you can get a better ops person than this. You can do better. And that's all we're saying. We're saying we respect the ENS team enough to say, look, we're going to give you space and a chance to do better. and we're going to bring our voices and empower on. This is not a cancel mob. This is absurd. For everything, for all it's worth, Brantly's already been canceled. Who cares? He's still in power, and even though he's been canceled, he's still in power right now. I mean, the whole point for us is we're just making space now for ourselves. And honestly, if your fascistic views can't keep up with the space that we're creating, then it's time you just get the fuck out of the way. So, I mean, that's all I wanted to say. Hopefully it brings some perspective to it. But yeah, I'm really happy to see a lot of queer and trans people on this and talking and being able to express their perspectives on this whole thing. Like I said, it's tricky being this kind of being this identity and being in crypto, which is, you're already pushing the envelope. Now you're pushing the envelope of gender norms, and it's it's just wild stuff, man. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Tux. Charm Taylor. Perfect.
Peace, everybody. Peace, Alisha. Peace and power to everybody in the space. I really, something that I have been not fixated with, but really concerned with, is just this idea that, well, twofold. One, someone said this a couple minutes ago, and I know it's a lot to have to address. And I also know that Alisha is not the only person on this call that is, a part of this team. So, whether or not they are practicing radical listening or not, or radical transparency or not, or radical vulnerability or not, the people are. And it can't just fall on the people to say, okay, well, I'm gonna move my token. Yes, and this is an abundant space. This is a space where we all can say, okay, and legitimately as an institution, we are designing an inclusive space. We have norms, we have agreements that we want folks in leadership to uphold. I often think about, like, how we get to a place, right, in real life where we're calling for abolition, and people are like, why would you go that far to say abolition? Like, abolish it? Wow. Like, and this, like, the reason why it gets that far, right, is because in the birthing of the thing, in the formation of the thing, in the foundation of the thing, we're not actually taking the time to be thoughtful and intentional about the design of the structure or the system, and deciding what. I've been asking this question for 2 months now in every single space I've been in. What are we onboarding? And so, are we onboarding the patriarchy? Are we onboarding homophobia? Are we onboarding, right, racism? What are we onboarding? Because to me, it seems like, okay, and then ENS House has to say, if you're going to be in leadership, it is a demand, decentralized or not. This is a demand. This is a standard that we all engage in anti-racist training. We all engage in that. Ignorance is not going to be an excuse, right? Point of proximity to these identities will not be an excuse or a barrier. We all value connection. Even if it can't just say, you can't say, okay, and because I am Catholic, right, I'm going to walk into the room with my identity. I'm going to stomp on other people's identities, and I'm going to say it's because, hey, I told you already how I was coming. No, you didn't. You told us that you were a part of a community. You told us that you were a leader. You told us that you believed in Web3. You told us that you were building with us. You never told us that you would be hateful, that you would disregard us when we told you, hey, that hurts. And so I think that's important here, is for me to feel like this is a space that I want to continue to be a part of as a builder, as someone who is a builder first, is a community member first, and an artist who's grateful for, that's a part of my vision, my purpose, my gift, my offerings. And it's my village who, like, affirms that in me by supporting my art and, coming to hear my music, speaking and being inspired by what I'm doing, X, Y, and Z. But at the heart of the thing is that we are actually, as humans, coexisting, choosing to coexist, choosing to be in this space. And when people don't uphold the norms or the agreements of the space, you call them out or you call them in. But either way, you have to call them to something. What is the something? The something is to say, hey, you're causing harm. You're choosing not to reduce harm. This is not about you being heard. This is not about you being educated in this moment. I've been in at least 3 spaces on this topic. I give thanks for Mec for having a space earlier. But the truth is, I've listened to people in that space escalate harm and saying, I'm actually going to say again, I don't see why we need to have, critical theory in schools. And like, sir, this is not the opportunity for you to educate yourself on the backs of right. And right now, in this moment, this is a space for us to process what happened and hear about the harm and have space for people to say, don't treat me like this. Hardline. Right? And if you want to then educate yourself, there's another space for that. There are other investments that you can make. There's thousands of us in this room right now. I'm sure there are thousands of people of us in Web3 who actually do anti-racist work, who actually do work to dismantle, right, oppression in institutions, because at the end of the day, people make up institutions. And that's why you heard, I think that was Whisk earlier, saying, hey, this is not an attack on you, but I need to know what conversations are happening internally. It can't just be pass the buck to the people and let the people decide. I want the people behind the .ENS to decide also. I want them to make decisions and have hard conversations about where their lines are. And is it okay to continue to cause harm or provoke harm? And I think this also has to do with the fact that, like, we have to decide that we're going to transcend troll culture, because some of the stuff is like you're bringing in these sort of old habits of like really I want to say they're like artifacts of these outgrown ways of dealing with difference and identity from Web 2 that look like I'm not emotionally mature enough. I don't feel secure enough to actually have difference and be with people who are different than me. Right. And so I'm going to troll, or I'd rather make a joke out of this moment instead of really seeing this opportunity to say, I am ignorant to the fact. I'm willing to make investments in learning more. I'm not going to do that at the expense of a space wherein people have decided that they feel safe to be themselves. I'm actually going to be on restorative hold. That's what I would like to see happen. You are on hold, Bradley. You can't say jump on the Twitter and say, and I'm going to keep building Web3. That dismissiveness, that disconnectedness will never lead to fulfillment in this space. Because to be honest, to dehumanize other people, you are actually dehumanizing yourself. You're several steps away from the humanity that even your spiritual house would say is a striving. It is about there's so many gods, there's so many languages, there's so many texts. That is the thing. You don't live on a mountaintop by yourself. You are in a village now. And when you are in a village, you have an obligation. I'm going to be honest. Restorative work is messy and it is chaotic. It is gradual. It is the opposite of a punitive, corrective, throw them in a box and cage them, colonial structure. It is not that. But it does say, you have, if you cause harm, you have to make it right. Mecca, my daughter says, "Ta-da! It's magic." But making it right and it's not that easy, right? But it is simple and it is doable, and we have to do it before we get to the point where everybody wants to leave this space too. Like everybody is retreating to their computers and outside of the world that we built outside of our doors for the same reasons: not feeling included, being literally murdered, being completely dehumanized, being exploited, and we have an opportunity now, right? We don't have to say, man, how did it get this far? We can build intentionally. We can we can choose. And there's no amount of competency and skill set that this person holds that other people don't. And that's what I was hearing them speak about. Who is the person they just spoke? But just to say there's plenty of talent, there's plenty of competency. So if it's not what is it really that we're saying we're holding on to? What are we protecting right now? And have that discussion. Because as quickly as people have come, people will leave. People will divest. And people will go and build something else.
Thank you. Thank you, Tran Taylor. Yeah. I really appreciate your words, and again, it just it means a lot, and I am glad that this space has been just like a space where so many people have felt comfortable to share their opinion. I think that what you said, that this is about the hurt, is really important, because I think this is another thing, which is you can jump, I don't know if it's important to go through all the stages. It's instead of just skipping straight to things, and without giving people an opportunity and the space to really deeply reflect on things. So yeah, while this is painful, I feel like it's completely necessary, and that we should maybe stay here for a second, and hopefully that's what the space does, at least. So thank you. Is it Loey.eth? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
Thanks, Alicia. Yeah, my name is Loey, and I'm really grateful to be in this space. I think that the crypto space is honored and graced with the presence of so many folks from exploited identities who this is not a safe space for them, a safe space for us. And I have just been floored by what I've been hearing. So thank you so much. I wanted to reflect on the context of these conversations. I hear a motion towards the ENS governance forum, and I also hear that there's a vote to exit Brantly from his positions of power. And those are spaces that are very different from the one that we're in right now. And I want to recognize that token voting and hosting on a asynchronous forum is a very different feeling than being in conversation and community. And there's lots of types of conversations that need to happen to heal something like this. So I someone said that people have been hurt. People have been harmed by this already. And just the words that were posted in themselves are harmful, so harmful that they can even be fatal. And I want to recognize that, and that there might be a lot more repair that needs to be done besides, having a token vote and some conversation. I think that what's happening here is really, really important. Because of that, we need tools in the crypto space for how to approach conflicts and processes and modalities. And I hear so much expertise, lived experience in this room. I see it demonstrated by the folks facilitating. I see it in the voices here, that there is real lived experience in what it means to navigate a conflict in a community. And this is something that I've been wanting in the crypto space for a long time. It's sort of coincidental timing right now, that on Tuesday, I'm hosting a DAO conflict facilitation event with the support of Gitcoin, and we've been preparing it for a few months. I come from conflict resolution spaces before I was ever in crypto. And so we're gathering together 10 different facilitators, be they restorative justice background or NVC or other decentralized modes of conflict resolution, and gathering them along with representatives from different DAOs to just build bridges between those spaces, because I know this is really new for a lot of folks in crypto. They don't even know that there are modalities to approach conflict resolution in a decentralized way. They don't know that there are trained facilitators with lived experience who can support that. And so I just want to like call out that we all deserve that in this space. And I think it's happening in a really beautiful, organic way in this Twitter space right now. But yeah, I just like wanted to call the timing there. It's a bit auspicious. And if anyone is interested in that event, I just like reposted it so that it would be easily accessible from my page. And I think it's important because in the future, these conflicts won't be as cut and dry. And in the past, they haven't been. You know, it's kind of rare that you get like something as public as a tweet that is as inflammatory as the words that were tweeted, if I understand it right. And so we're going to deal with a lot of conflicts that are more gray area in some people's eyes. There's going to be a lot more like infighting, and it's not going to be as easy as let's just put up a vote to exit this person. We're going to need real process. And so I just want to call that out and say that like I want to support any DAO, any crypto space to help develop their approach to conflict resolution. Like everybody can have their own procedure, but it is true, it was said earlier in this space, every project needs to have a procedure with which they approach these things, and they need to know some folks that they can call upon to initiate that process. And that's it for me. Just thank you again so much for the incredible voices that have been sharing here and like really schooling. Like I'm just over here snapping behind my phone. You know, y'all, this is an incredible like anti-racism, anti-oppression, anti-exploitation education you're getting just by being in this space. If you are listening, and thank you to those who are teaching. And that's it from me.
Thank you, Lowy.eth. Do you know I actually shared the tweet from a couple of days ago about the workshop that you're doing, because I think in the last week, or maybe it was the week before, the community stewards were talking about developing a code of conduct. I'm sure that Jordan is in the space somewhere, but oh yeah, I see. And so I just like shared the tweet because I said, oh, you know, this is probably a really good workshop to attend to kind of, yeah, really think seriously and build out as robust a like procedure or system as we can. And just like really appreciate you sharing your perspective, and the workshop I've pinned the details from your tweet if anyone wants to check it out, or follow Lowy.eth for more details. Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, Gloria, you've had your hand up for so long.
Yeah, no, I will try to make this quick because I know that there are others who really want to talk as well. But you know, when I got into the Web3 space, the one thing that I loved, you know, about like not knowing who Satoshi Nakamoto was, is that the person could be anybody, right? We see all these sweaters that say like Satoshi is black, Satoshi is female, Satoshi is queer, you know. And for me, like the, you know, yoga person in me was like, yeah, I can see Satoshi in every single person that I work with, who joins our DAO, who's in the Web3 space, because the ideas behind crypto should apply to everyone equally. And that should be something that we like want to really start to push forward with. But when we look at like whether or not this whole discussion about like Brantly is the best person for our space or whatnot, and how do we keep him in there versus what he did, that is very perplexing to me, because it shows that people don't really understand some of the systems of biases of oppression that have gone towards people of color, towards LGBT, towards like trans communities, towards women. And then the product that those people create, you know, if you don't understand those biases, how they showed up in Web 2 or in finance or anything like that, then the product that you're going to create in Web3 is not innovative. It's not, inclusive. It's going to lean towards the bias of those people and the things that they hold. And so what you're saying is like, by saying like, I don't understand why this person is the best quote unquote person for the product, even though they can't be inclusive. It's really not. You're only just recreating these systems of oppression in the Web3 space and not understanding how what the pain would be by recreating it. And it also would show that your organization doesn't quite hold the perspective of like everybody is inclusive and their perspective is impactful towards innovating towards a better Web3. And that can only come if everybody is seen as, again, Satoshis, as everyone's seen as they're bringing their whole selves and being there authentically. And I would really question, for those who say like, why can't Brantly stay where he is what's the harm that he is doing now in the positions that he is? What is my own personal bias that allows me to not understand how this decision is harming other people? And are we building the best product that we could build by having him at the head? If this has to be a product thing and you can't see people like for what they contribute to the space and you can't see the Satoshi in everyone, then just understanding like the impact biases has towards the product is going to be huge for you, and if that's, to me, it's like the biggest thing. Sorry, I'm a mom at the same time and my kid is calling me.
Thanks, Gloria. Yeah, I see also that Charm Taylor, did you have your hand up as well? Just before I go to Joey. And yeah, Charm, did you want to unmute? Okay.
Good. Oh no, you can go to Joey. I'll come back. I'm gonna listen some more.
Oh, okay. I'll just give Ian, did you want to say anything in response?
The one thing, not a response, the one thing I also want to contextualize in this conversation, and this is something I've been talking and thinking about a lot, is just, even Alisha as like head of community at ENS as a woman of color is like so modern and like groundbreaking. Even me being head of community at Wonder, like I want to underpin that, like, the difference here is we are early and we are all here. And that is so historic. Web 2, Web 1, Web 0. Like, my father is an electrical engineer, and he was building like phone infrastructure. And like, he was the one Black person in that room. And the effect of the internalized racism it had on him estranged myself from our connection, because he had to apologize so much for who he was. He had to pretend not to be Black. He had to do all these things in order to just stay in the space. And like, I recognize his sacrifice, even though I'm not long connected to him. I recognize his sacrifice in letting me be here now. Right? He made like a sacrifice, and it cost him his own mental health, and it cost him his own connection to Blackness and his connection to me. So what I want to just state is that it is historic that there were queer and trans people here. It is anti-colonial that we could even be here. It is historic. I come from the United States. In that context, I don't speak globally. But for my context, 50 years ago, this wouldn't be. 20 years ago, this wouldn't be. 10 years ago, this wouldn't be. This moment is only now that it's possible for us all to be here. And it has come at the cost of our ancestors and our family members and our grandparents and our siblings. Like, it has come at a cost, but we are here. And we can build something in the image of ourselves. And that is historic, at least from where I hail from. I have that opportunity to be the first, to be the innovator, to be the one whose voice is the loudest, is such a blessing that I am humbled constantly that I can even be here. So I just want to say that, like, in the course of the United States history where I come from, the ability for me to be here with all of you is historical, is momentous, is something that was not possible at any other time in the past 400 years. And like, I'm excited that we can bring in indigeneity, we can bring in our experiences, our generational experiences, and share them in the context of new technology, and build a technology that loves and welcomes authenticity and the bravery that I come from.
Thank you, Madam Cult Leader. Joey, Thanks for your patience.
Thank you, Alicia. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Awesome. This is a pretty powerful conversation. It's important when the community comes together to really have hard conversations like this. I'm just, grateful to learn, and I'm here really to learn. So thanks everyone for sharing your perspective. A lot of you have given me a lot to think about here, and I love this space so much because of what it represents. Crypto and Web3 is about making technology that doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care where you came from or what you believe or anything, and it doesn't give power to any one group over another. That's like the true magic here. And I'm here to kind of like, I'm not here to I want everyone to have a platform. I want everyone to be included. And something that is kind of an important question I want to ask is, what could Brantly do to stay in the community? Because that's something that I haven't heard much of in this conversation. And, he had been leading ENS without problem for, a year or however long. And then kind of a lot's happened over the last 24 hours. And I definitely don't agree with how he reacted. I think he made a lot of mistakes. And I just want to know, is there an opportunity for him to reconcile with the community? Is there an opportunity for common ground, given that, he couldn't ever, and if he ever did make a move to oppress through the technology, that would be immediately stamped out. And I think everyone in the community would rally behind that without question. It's really an honest question. Is there some potential for reconciliation, or is that not an option? And I'm really just here to learn. And again, I'm grateful for being able to be up on stage with you all. And as we have these hard conversations, it's really important. So thanks.
Okay, I'm gonna jump all over this one. Sorry, Alicia, I don't mean to like overstep
No,
you.
go ahead.
So until this is, I have done a lot of like anti-racism work and led anti-racism rallies, and so I've done a lot of work. You just have to believe that. If you don't believe that, you can, look me up. One of the things that I would have to say is, before a person does someone externally towards their, anti-racism work, towards their whole work, they have to do things internally. And so like the best thing, if I was truly a friend to this dude, I would look at him and say, you need to step down until you've done the work, right? That's what he needs to do. As a leader, you step down until you've done the work. If I had made a comment that was homophobic, and someone who was from that community who I trusted came up to me and said, Gloria, what you said was homophobic and you're in a position of power, I would have to step down until I've done the work, so that I do not continue to, from my own biases, perpetuate, all of my beliefs and harm those communities even more. To say that it doesn't show up in our work or in our code is a total fallacy, because there are still things where if I say like, oh, the master versus the slave versus in GitHub, the master branch versus the slave branch, that can be very offensive. Having something white labeled versus having like an other list, that can be very offensive. You don't know how things show up from your place of privilege until you've done the work to realize, wow, I have privilege and it's showing up in my work. So the very first thing you do is you fix the thing internally so that you do not create more damage externally. So, I think that that's like, if the community really said, hey, we really want Brantly to be involved in this community, then I would push them. Oh, thank you, Pasta, to thinking I'm a loser, but I'm really not. That you would push them more to be towards, doing the work in and of themselves, and then, saying, hey, I'm ready to go lead at the helm. And I think that happens like with anyone. Taking a step back is not, it's not a weakness. It is actually a strength to say, like, I don't know anything here. I don't know how the words affected my community, and seeing it and listening and being like, wow, this has really been impactful. I really did a lot of harm. that would be where these positions of power should be. So I think if he really cared about it, that would be the first conversation I would have. The second conversation I would have would be, how decentralized is ENS if Brantly can make these comments and have such an effect on the community? And can we as an org start to check on the people who have been the most harmed within these communities and make sure that they are okay? B, build a diverse culture within our culture and be better allies to the communities that we have harmed. These are all discussions that should be happening, right? So first we talk about the people, then we talk about the code and the technology, because the people build the technology, and the people, when they show up to work, you have people who on the weekends are like, having guns pointed at their head or having death threats given to them, and they still show up to work on Monday to build the technology. So to sit there and say that you can like put them apart or distinguish between the two is either a perspective of privilege, saying like, yeah, you're not affected by what's being said, or you don't know those people who are being affected by what they said. And we should all be taking a better look at like where our privilege is invoked. How do we show up to these communities? How can we be better allies to these communities? And what can be done as an org in order to make sure that these spaces are the most diverse and the most inclusive for all of the different communities that want to build and utilize this technology?
Thank you. And I wanted to add to what Gloria's saying, Joey, and also I love the 5 protocol. I've been following it for a long time. Anyway, it's an aside. But anyway, I think that to add to Gloria's point in like kind of this current context, what we're seeing is that like initially when I saw the tweet, I was like, okay, like even though 2016 was recent, like too recent for my comfort, let's see what he says now. And then he doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down. If you see the recording of the room, he said, I stand by what I said. So for me, in terms of Gloria's framework and my own framework, that's where he is. That's who he is. He's confirmed that for all of us. Listen to people's actions, right? He confirmed many times that is who he is. So from my vantage point, there is no more restoration to be done, because that person said, I commit to my harm. I commit to my viewpoint, and I will not step down from that. So for me, in that response, there's nothing left for there's no more conversation to be had, right? It's like, you said trans people don't exist. You said gay people are evil. That's your commitment. So I now respond in tow to that commitment with what my commitment is. And if my commitment is, I don't think you should be in a position of power or leadership, then that is my commitment. And then, ENS can do the voting and do the DAO kind of system. But at that point, Joey, like in this context, there is no more, right? If someone says, I am committed to harm, and you ask them, are you sure? And they say, yes, there's nothing else to be done. That is past the point of restoration. That's past the point of conversation, because the conversation has ended. There's no more dialogue to be had. And I know that's an uncomfortable truth for people, but we can't change people. I can't change anybody, right? All I can do is exist and speak my truth bravely, but the rest is up to others. And that's why this work, it makes people uncomfortable in any space, is because it makes us face who people really are. And that's uncomfortable, to face someone that believes what they believe. But at the end of the day, that's not part of our journey now. That our journey now is to, what do we do moving forward, knowing this truth, knowing this fact. And if he then changes his mind 10 years down the road because of the punishment, great. If he never learned, great. That's none of my business anymore. My business is, how do I make the space inclusive and diverse? How do I make the space welcoming and loving to sex workers, queer people, trans people, Black and brown people, the intersection of those identities? That's my business now, because I know what the T is. So it's about accepting what people say and then moving forward with action, and not continuing to hope and pray and dialogue to the people who have decided what they believe. It's accepting and moving forward with what your belief system then dictates.
Yeah, I think that's, obviously I agree. Like, if I was going to vote right now, I would probably vote to have Brantly removed. I think it was a mistake for him to double down in public like that. Religion is a funny thing. It's very powerful. To Gloria's point, I come from a lot of privilege, so I'm just kind of here recognizing that. And one part of my identity is that I come from a Catholic family, and I am no longer Catholic. And that was, I had like a lot of hard pain with my family, like being kind of, I feel a tremendous actually bond with the LGBTQ community, because being a Catholic son and saying you're not Catholic feels a lot like, you know, being ostracized for your identity. It's like, it's really, it's incredibly difficult. And it's so hard to see someone hold beliefs that are that powerful that they separate you from your community. And so, all I came to ask was the question that I did earlier, and I think like in this case, it seems that the community is kind of aligned more or less. But I just want to know if there are beliefs that can be held that don't like. I have a good relationship with my family now, and it's because even though we disagree on really important things, we don't let those things get in the way of our relationship and our family. And I'm just wondering if we can have that in the community at some point as well. But yeah, like I said, doubling down in public, that's really hard. I'm wondering if there's a way for this to kind of resolve in a more unified manner. And I don't know. At this point, it's just really important, these conversations. I'm glad to be a part of it. So thanks, everyone.
Cool. Thanks, Joey. Charm, Taylor, did you have something?
Yeah. Thank you, Alicia. Peace, Joy. I actually had a question for you, and this would, so stay up here, because my question is just, I want to ground us all in a norm, and if this norm feels like something you can agree to, then I invite you to engage this conversation, Joy. And if it does not feel like something you can agree to at this time, you certainly do not have to engage, right? There's no force here. But my question to you, in full transparency, in this moment, is that your friend?
To be completely transparent with you, I actually don't know Brantly at all. I have people in my life who I love who have similar but not as strong of beliefs. And I also have people in my life who would be hurt by those beliefs. And that's just something that is kind of just a hard part of life, is that, like, can you have relationships with people who probably don't have relationships with each other simultaneously? And crypto is a big community. So no, I don't know Brantly personally at all, but I just, there are elements of my experience that relate to this conversation, and that's why I'm up here. It's a really good question.
Yeah, I asked that question because, and thank you for engaging it, for utility, for our highest utility. This under this, I think we also have to, be honest about what it is we protect, what it is we have allegiance to, seen or unseen in spaces. And I do hear you saying, you see in Bradley, you see your family, you may have seen yourself. Many of you in this room have already experienced 1,000 Bradleys in your life, and have them at your dinner tables, and have them in your discords, and in your back channels, and in your boardrooms, and in your, right. So I think it's important to have the first reckoning. For example, I think the first person to add that question should be offered to is the person who did the harm. Like, what would you have done differently? How could this been approached differently? What actually happened? Who has actually been impacted by what you have done and said? Because when harm happens, it spirals out into the community. So regardless if I even wanted to eat this today, like I wasn't even on this today. I was on 90s R&B and some art residency deadlines. That's what I was gonna do, and then I was gonna get my nails done and go pick up my kids, right? And so, tapping into some great spaces, with some community members, and heard, from the title of Meg's first room, that harm had been caused. So that's how it works. It spirals out wildly into the community. So it's on everybody's timeline, and it's in everybody's space, and everybody's got to bite at it, digest it, chew on it, whether or not they wanted to or not. And so because of that, there is this, and I'm gonna be honest, like I said, in all of the circles I've ever facilitated with people who have caused this type of harm within organizations or in one-to-one relationships or similar types of harm. Rarely do we see people come to the circle and say, I am ready to apologize. I am ready to understand what the needs of my community are, how I need to repair this harm. I am so accountable right now. I have done the reflect. None of that. People show up to circles defensive. People show up to circles feeling very protected. They often come with a safety net around them. And we've seen what can happen when people do show up to the circles with a safety net and with a whole bunch of money, and then they never have to make it right. And then we, the people who we were told had the vote and the voice, our voice gets washed away and drowned by the dollar, right? By who has the amount of money to speak the loudest. So I think just to come back to what your initial question was around, is there room for him to repair harm, or is there still room for restorative approaches? And I think that, well, so a rose is still a rose whether or not you smell it, right? This process is the oldest process humanity has, and it has been, in many places erased by colonization. But Afro-Indigeneity, this circle culture is real, y'all. It is a beat 'em drum of this world. We're going to always have the process. It's if the Bradleys of the world choose to do the work. That is internal. The circle starts inside. The circle starts there when you actually disarm yourself, when you actually connect with the reality. The shit, you don't necessarily hear unity in this room. I'm gonna be honest, because not everybody believes that boy was wrong. Let's just say that. I mean, I forget the sister who left the space earlier who was talking about conflict mediation and a DAO, and all of those things sound really, really good. So I'm really interested in that. And something that she said was just simply not true, which is not all of us think it's wrong. It feels good. It feels like, oh my God, it feels like comforting, and it feels like peace. Everybody wants to get off the call, go to bed, knowing that the Web3, quote unquote, our space, we all have shared values, and we don't. There are people who believe he is not wrong. I know Catholic people who are verily committed to compassion and humility and humanity, and would never stand side by side and say, well, because I'm Catholic, what he said I believe in, or how he said it and how he persisted to say it and cause harm, I believe in that. That's just not true. It's just not true. So it's a very individual, personalized. It takes time. It takes sincerity. It's bigger than a publicity, for public facing email or statement. It would really have to mean a Joey for all of the Bradleys in the world, that they would really have to decide, I choose I choose to do the work. I am actively investing my time, my energy, my ashe, which is their power, their command, which means you would have to step down. You would have to step back. You would have to make space and make room in your heart, right? In your mind, in your day, beyond just business as usual, which is what he tweeted out. I will continue to build Web3. The fact of the matter is, he knows for a fact that his job that ain't an issue. He won't have to worry about whether or not he's going to not have a way to provide for himself, or a way to continue to do what it is he finds fulfilling. And even that is still, there's still some stain there, and that's the stain that, regardless if he ever speaks on it, it's in him. Because again, to dehumanize someone else, you dehumanize yourself. So that's just there. That's just there. And that's a stain in his heart, on his conscience, and it is heavy, and it is enduring, And for many of us, that's a generational curse in itself, because it sounds like he been born into it. Sound like it's the only thing he's ever known to be true. So I would encourage you to ask. I would encourage you, if I want you to ask him that question. I want you to ask, hey, do you think that there's a way that you can begin to have do some reparative work with the community? I encourage you to go ahead and start looking inside and taking some of your ETH and investing it in your betterment, in your understanding, because for all of the tech competencies you have, for all of the skills that you have that serve this organization, there's so many social competencies, emotional competencies, there's so many other competencies in which he is clearly devoid and needs to invest in. If he chooses it, though, he would have to want it.
Absolutely, Charm. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't come to this conversation with really an agenda or a safety blanket or anything. And I appreciate the way that you kind of like framed that. So yeah, I think that Brantly is going to have to address all these points. He's going to have to come and either probably apologize for doubling down, and if he wants any chance to like stay in good faith with the community, or the community is speaking now. I think that like the fact that the community has a platform is so important. I'm the way I describe myself is I'm an engineer and an idealist. I come to crypto to build technology that gives everyone in this conversation and everyone on the planet the ability to do whatever they want with their money and their tokens. And that's the common ground that I keep holding on to. And yeah, I hope that we can center the conversation a lot around who we do want to be and not who we want to not be. Because I think it's pretty obvious that some of the behaviors that Brantly has exhibited are what we don't want to exemplify as a community. What do we want to be? Who do we want to? Yeah, exactly. So thanks again, Alisha.
Thanks, Joey. I think another thing that I think about is that the contrast is a gift. Like, contrast is always a gift, even when it's painful. And so, again, I don't know, just to walk the path with sunshine is like, without the rain, like the sun doesn't it doesn't feel as good because you've experienced the contrast. So I don't know. I just like, I don't think there's like any need to like rush through this. And if it's uncomfortable to stand in the rain, I mean, it's probably a good place to be for a while then. So
I just want to say, Alisha, I have to go. Yeah. Because I'm tired. Yeah, fair enough. Like, this has been a good conversation, but like, I just need to protect my energy. And like, we'll probably be taking a few days of break from Web3 just to, recharge and recenter. I think what I want to leave people with, and like what I want to leave you with, Alisha, is just that, like, I keep going back to it. What we're doing is historic. Our voices are historic. We are so important. And like, at the end of the day, this isn't going to be rainbows and sunshine. And like, there's this cult of toxic positivity currently in like in the United States. And the reality is, it's not going to be pretty. And the reality is, it's not going to be easy. The reality is that there's not going to be unity. Unity is a two-way street, right? Someone needs to be in unity with me, and I need to be in unity with them. And if one party fails in that unity, then there's no unity. So unity is a pipe dream if one person does not unify with me, even if I want to unify with them. So at the end of the day, like, we might have to fragment, we might have to make different separate communities, and that's not a bad thing, right? Accepting the differences is not a bad thing. It's being honest and realistic about the history of, at least the United States, the past 400 years, history of slavery and genocide, history of, my father and my grandmother being excluded from their passions and their joys because no one had unity with them, right? Like, I'm a descendant of that. And my lesson from them is that strength and power gets you so far, but you have to protect and be in unity with yourself and your values. And if someone else isn't in unity with you, then you can't choose them. And like, from a different perspective from Joey, I found that my family could not be in unity with me. So then I estranged myself. So that's another example of like, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes there is separation and division, and that is the truth of life as well. As much as there can be restoration and unity, another truth of life is that there is going to be difference and separation. We have to hold both of those truths if we're going to build something incredible. And I definitely hold both those truths. And for me, like moving forward, like at least with Brantly, there is no unity from my side. I revoked that when I saw behavior and doubling down. So, ENS is a protocol for everyone. ENS is not owned by Brantly. So the future is what we choose, and the future is the communities we decide to build and unify around. But Alisha, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for allowing me to kind of help moderate the space a bit. I think you're in good hands with other people on the stage. So, yeah, good luck, everybody.
Thanks, Anne. And I want to go to Daddy.eth and then Isaiah and then Cobra Commander. Again, I can see these hands up. Daddy.eth, you're unmuted, but I can't hear you speaking. Are you speaking? Sometimes Twitter does this. If you just want to drop and then join and request again, and I'll just bring you up straight away if you can't speak. But Isaiah.eth.
No, I appreciate you letting me speak, Alisha. Yeah, there's a, it's, I mean, it's what was happening with that situation is just like really complex, mainly because as I heard one of the guys saying, like he was questioning whether or not his faith or his worldview or his beliefs had any role, like, or any place in this in Web3 or just in what he was doing with the crypto community. And I think what honestly what this kind of shows is that there's a lot of things that a lot of people still need to learn about the world that they live in, the world that they are starting to get accustomed to, especially as like as technology advances, people's ideologies will change, their perspectives will change, they'll interact with more and more people. And I think it's really important to have empathy from the jump, like from the very beginning, to have empathy, to move with empathy, to lead with that. Because if you're not leading with that, I don't think you'll ever be able to really understand how you can change and impact society if you don't really understand the world that those individuals come from. I like even myself, like just doing joining different DAOs, like for example developer DAO, like there's members in developer DAO who are from all over the world, and I've gained a lot of insight and perspective from talking to them that helped me shape and understand the challenges that they face trying to get into Web3 and build more empathy, just even in understanding like how do we onboard people, how do we make the experience for other members better, how do we educate people, how do we influence society in a way that like actually makes it makes a difference that has like that's sustainable rather. And I think one of the challenges that I mean, I grew up in the South, I grew up as a black man here, and I grew up in the faith as well. And I think one of the things that just even growing up I started to pick up on was that there's a lot of harm done when people feel oppressed, when they feel like their worldview or just even who they are naturally can't be expressed. And I mean, I think we all have seen and understand the the mental health challenges that come with people being feeling like those who are in leadership roles and things like that are going to double down on their perspective. And so I mean, I don't, it's not that people can't have a heart change. I do think it's very, very important though that like we understand that like you can't necessarily always change people, you just change the way you deal with them. And that talent is not qualifying factor, or skills not a qualifying factor for leadership. Really, leadership is understanding like how do you motivate, encourage, unite, and continue to drive people towards a common goal. I think a lot of times we've seen people who are very, very gifted and they get pushed into positions of leadership that they're emotionally not fit for, and they end up doing more harm than good, and they drive out other talented people from being associated with that, from that organization or that team or what have you. And I think so for for anybody who's wanting to say like, hey, he needs another chance, another shot, just and not that it makes somebody a horrible person or bad person. It's just that you have to understand like, okay, because of the way they grew up in the world that they come from, there's just a perspective that's just really going to be hard for them to embrace unless they just naturally have that empathy. And like somebody else was here as well, so I've seen people from the same faith who are super compassionate, who lead with empathy, who will go around the world doing different missions and things like that. And so for me, those things where it's just like, I think it's important to recognize that like, like people might say certain group but they're not like, it's one of those things where it's just like there's people in Web who will talk about NFTs, but can't tell you the difference between an L1 and an L2. And that guy, like for me, it's like, it's like he questioned his understanding of his own faith if he's ever read the Bible, because who move like that, like that sounded like, okay, you didn't really read what you say you believe in, because if you really read it, you would understand that, how whatever denomination within the faith you are, it's like, that's not how God, or just people in that space, that's not how Jesus moved, that's not how anybody who's from the faith would ultimately, who was a true believer of faith, they wouldn't move that way. The most compassionate people in the world. And I think that's something that to me is just a sign that, like, okay, he's not of that community at all, truly. He's, or it's like it's still learning and it's not fully understanding it. And it's just like, you can't weaponize your faith ever. I think that's one of the most dangerous things. You can look at world history, people weaponizing their faith caused extreme harm to society. And we definitely cannot weaponize our worldviews and our beliefs as we start to, become, I think more connected as just society, like just with Web3 community, as borders are starting to become, like, I guess, as things start to become more flat and allowing for more people to, interact with each other. Things I think I've had multiple experiences, like even when college, students from other countries coming to, our university and having a hard time being accepted and embraced by professors there, and seeing how frustrating it was for them and how difficult it was for them emotionally to be miles away from their home and to have people, sort of like chastise them or get on them about things, the way that they pronounce things and talk about things. So I feel like it's no place for that. And it's because I've seen too many gifted people, too many talented people stop pursuing their goals, mainly because somebody in leadership positioned their worldview that had really nothing to do with the outcome of what they were trying to accomplish. They used that as pretty much just sharing, whether it's casually or just sharing it in a way that let that person feel like, hey, like they're where they come from or who they are naturally, or things about themselves that they feel like accord to who they are, that it's not acceptable in that environment. And like, that someone was sharing earlier, it's like, they lost a relationship or felt like, their connection to their parent was kind of just fractured by that, right? And I think it's like really, really important for us to understand like how impactful the things we do are. And I think it can be challenging, I think, at times for people to understand, like, hey, like how is it that my faith and what I believe is holding this person back? But I think it's the way that we look at it, it's like, it's just empathy and being open-minded, extremely open-minded, to understanding like, okay, this person is, even if they are like myself, like, I've had friends who really helped me understand, or just even natural growing up, I'm like, being in Atlanta and being in a community where there are fluent Black people is something that was that provided me advantages over other Black people who were growing up in the same like generation I was, who just lived in rural towns where the access to technology was limited. Their access to affluent, like, families and things like that around them was limited. And so I think just even that, it's like, okay, this is a Black man, I'm a Black man, we're going to the same university. But then I'm learning like, oh, because where he's from, he had a lot harder time getting here. And because of that, he's starting further back. And it's like, it didn't seem like that maybe to our professor, but it was very clear to me that was something that was differing from us. And so it's like, even that subtly, it's like, okay, if it's that subtle, it's like, we can look at it at scale and understand like, okay, now, like, how do you do that when it's like, okay, not only is this person from a different country, they're different, their sexual orientation is different, their socioeconomic status is different. Like, you start to like understand and unravel like how deep this goes, and how like things can start to box people in and limit them without us even fully understanding, being aware of that. And I just think that's why it's just really, really critical for anybody who's in leadership in this space to be like very like practice empathy and understand, like constantly renewing your mind around like what your worldviews are and what the challenges are that people's face. So yeah, I know it's time has run out, so I definitely want to give people a chance to speak. But yeah.
Thank you, Isaiah.eth. I definitely, like, what I took away from that was that in Web3, your neighbor has never been closer, which is a gift. And if you are struggling to find people who, share a different worldview to yours, then this is great news, because in Web3, I would say that it's kind of like easier to find people who have a different life experience from your own, more so than like any other environment in, like, well, at least that I've been in. before this, and I know that Gloria, just like your experience working in tech, you can probably kind of like speak to that as well. But also, I just want to quickly, before I move on, address people who are saying that I'm not giving speakers a chance to speak to both sides of this, this discussion, and I acknowledge that I am very intentionally trying to bring people up to the stage who have specifically been hurt by what's happened over the last 24 hours. And I think that I'm happy to facilitate more conversations and have more conversations with people that who share different opinions who share different opinions to the people who have been predominantly on stage over this space, and then also who kind of share different opinions from what is, I don't know, kind of the loudest opinion at the moment on Twitter and how the DAO potentially will proceed. I'm happy to do that. I just think that that if you can't be okay with the fact that people are hurt and that they are entitled to space to deal with that hurt and be heard, then I feel like this is kind of on trend with the level of empathy that we're talking about, which is I kind of ask kindly that you try to find a little bit more empathy to understand that for you to get to a place where you can immediately rebut something, there are a lot of people who aren't even at that space yet. So I just think in kind of the order of things that I'm gonna kind of create space for that, and there will be other Twitter spaces for everyone on both sides of the discussion to have their opinions. I don't know. That's where I'm at. Okay, Daddy.eth, you dropped and rejoined. Are you there now? If you want to unmute. I can see that your hands are... Oh yeah, there you go. Okay, but I still can't hear you if you're talking, and there's no blue audiogram on your name. But if you want to DM me, maybe you could DM me, and I could try to share some of where you're at. Okay, Cobra Commander.
Hi, thanks for letting me speak again. Responding to, can a community allow someone like this back in? And I think it was Joey who was saying that most of us probably have relationships with people, personal relationships with people who are bigots or we disagree with their views, which is fine. I do too. But this is basically a brand. This person's supposed to be a leader. I don't think it's acceptable to be a leader and have these kind of views. So I don't think a person like that belongs in that position. And I think playing devil's advocate for Brantly, playing devil's advocate for bigots and saying things like, "Oh, there's two sides to this conversation" or anything like that. I think it's part of religious brainwashing in general. I grew up extremely religious, so I definitely can say that if I want. But I don't think we should be tolerating people's intolerance. So I don't think this person should be able to find their way back into the community, because that is not what this space is about. And for also, someone mentioned that maybe he shouldn't have said that in public, but I think it's a good thing that he did say it in public, because people like that need to be weeded out, because we are a collaborative species. We're social creatures, and we're the most successful monkey because we're the most collaborative monkey. We work well together. So I think that's different than tolerating a family member. This is not a personal relationship. It's an ambassador of what's essentially a brand. And He doesn't belong in a leadership position, period.
Thank you, Cobra Commander.
Thank you.
Wait, who? Oh, Laurie. Grace.eth. Are you there?
Hi, everyone. I didn't know I'd get to speak so quickly, so I'm just pulling over here. I was starting to drive, so let me pull over real quick and not kill myself. Thanks for having me up here. I just wanted to point out something that I thought was relevant to the conversation, and I'll make it quick because I'm sure other people have a lot to say, and there's been a lot said, and I appreciate the conversation. I was trying to end my own conversation on this because I'm a trans woman. I transitioned in 2008, and I do not like having this conversation, to be honest with you. Having this conversation is difficult because the hardest thing to do as a trans woman is to just show the world that we exist, right? It's that simple. We don't want to be in the spotlight. We don't want to be in the news. We don't want legislation to try and remove rights that are so simple. Like just even the ability to go to a bathroom is something that we struggle with already, and especially for people who are transitioning or who are non-binary now, and they're having difficulty and legislation. Sorry, I'm trembling. But legislation is trying to erase us. And so the hardest thing that me as a trans person has to deal with on a daily basis is to just be the simple existence of who we are. And last night he said something, jumped in right when, as he was talking about, he said something to the effect of, well, now people like me and people with my opinion, people like me, now I wonder if I have to live in fear, and I was just thinking, do you have any freaking an idea what you're talking about living in fear? As a trans person, I almost got assaulted when I was transitioning at a rest area by a group of men, and I barely made it to my car where my family was inside the car. He has no idea, and he's coming from such a point of privilege that he's questioning whether having these beliefs is going to have consequences, and if he has to fear now being able to have these beliefs. He has no idea what living in fear really means as a trans woman. I've seen my friends be abused. I've seen my friends decide that they were just ready to punch out, right? Having to have this conversation of the very fact that we exist is what is most difficult thing in the world, because all our lives we've suffered in silence, and we just wanted people to know that we exist. And so to hear people tell us that we matter, to hear people rallying around, to hear people rallying around in support that we matter means more than anything. And to have that in Web3 is the most important thing. To just say, just like someone was saying earlier, we don't give a shit. We just want us all to move forward together. It doesn't matter if you have a duck PFP or a picture or a photo or or a cartoon. It doesn't matter who you are. We just want you to be a part of this amazing thing. But then to come back into it, and when I think I've gotten past it, I step right back into the mud that says trans people doesn't exist. So I just wish that if someone could, because for some reason he's banned me or blocked me, which is fine, but I don't even know the guy and I'm already blocked by him. So, if he's a little hurt at what I have to say, then I hope he understands what it feels like when someone tries to erase who you are as a person and what you're trying to say just to be and live. But to tell someone they don't exist strikes a lot deeper to the psyche. And some people hear this for the last time and they decide that they just can't take anymore. And that's the thing that hurts me the most. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to double down because I know that I exist and that I matter. And I know that I'm going to lead with love. So I can choose to respond with anger and hate. And I used to do that all the time. It didn't get me anywhere. I'm sorry, I'm going to wrap with this. But leading with love has to be the response. And I want people to lead with love. And I want people, I created an auction. I posted one of my pieces of art, and it has a 2 ETH bid, and the entirety of that piece of art is going to Outright International. So instead of responding with anger and hate, we have to respond with love, and we have to double down on reaching out to those people who really matter, who sometimes feel like they don't in this big vacuum of Web3. So that's all I wanted to say, is that I just hope that people who say things like that, like what Bradley said last night, that he has to worry about what his opinions are now. He doesn't understand what it really feels like to worry about just living your existence each and every day. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Laurie Grace. Really appreciate how painful and it is to have to relive all of this, but I really think that it is so valuable to hear voices like yours. So I really appreciate you for having the strength to share. Okay, I'm pretty sure Daddy.eth has a VPN problem. Daddy.eth, you're unmuted, but do you want to try talk? It's definitely not working. A VPN would do it, I think. Yeah. Okay. Angela.eth, are you around? Oh, and then we'll go to Daylon and Natalie. Okay, Angela.eth. Actually, Angela, I feel like I remember other spaces where you've also tried to speak and it hasn't worked. Okay, Daylon.eth.
Hey, can you hear me?
Hey, yes, I can hear you.
Hey, first, just wanted to say thanks to all the speakers. It's been really impactful to hear your stories. I really admire your courage and your patience, and definitely the wisdom that you've shared in this space. I wanted to say thank you to Alisha. I have so much respect for the work she does, and like this space itself is a testament to that. I can't imagine it happening under any other circumstances. The only main point I wanted to say is just to remind everyone that each and every one of you are all loved and you all matter. And in the words of Bill Hicks, at the end of the day, our words and our actions come down to a choice between fear and love. And I hope that we'll choose love, because I think love will win. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Daylon.eth. And also appreciate everything that you do and have been doing, like especially in the forum, in the community, and I'm really grateful for you. Natalie Crow.eth, would love to hear from you.
Hi, Alicia. Hi, darling. Thank you for holding this space, and want to maybe preface by saying many Black and Brown folks, queer folks in this space, sex workers are often shouldering the responsibility to hold spaces for accountability, to hold space for truth telling. The reality is that we're also the most under-resourced in this community. So I'm going to need y'all in the audience to resource Alicia and other folks in the space that have labored time and time again over the last 24 hours specifically to talk about these topics. It is not easy. It is very triggering for some of us, yet we still hold stand tall in these spaces and hold space for truth telling and for these conversations. So I need y'all to like really resource folks in the space. I personally, just from my own standpoint, I don't want to hear like apologies. I've seen time and time again cis white men come up to the stage and other stages in the space and try to play devil's advocate, try to jump on the, I want to say, Brantly train, and I'm not here for it. I think you need to sit down in the audience and listen to the tons of folks who've come up to the stage and expressed anger, expressed trauma, and have expressed other things, and do some radical listening and listen to the folks that are holding space for this and for each other. Sometimes it's better to listen than to open your big mouth and start to question the actions of all of us who have stood on numerous stages over the last 24 hours to talk about this shit. to tweet, to engage in digital organizing, to lift up trans, queer, Black and brown folks, who to redelegate your ENS to those folks, instead of Coinbase and other white establishments and people in this space. So let's hold space for that and learn how to listen. That is a problem with some of the people in Web3. They come into this space and they think that they can bring the same behaviors that they ran rampant around the internet and other tech spaces and adjacent industries, and without with immunity and without accountability. Web3 ain't it. Like most of us that are in this space, especially my peers, will hold you to the fire and make sure that you're held accountable. And people like Farouk and Morgan and Nicole Beeman and other folks that want to run interference and do diversion tactics and engage in reputation and crisis management, you too are going to be held accountable for the shit that y'all are doing, because that was incredibly harmful stage. And I need folks to do what they do best and divest from those types of conversation. That was incredibly harmful, and I need folks to hold space for folks and their trauma that was birthed out of that space in particular. The real shit that I want to say is that the reality in the DAO ecosystem and blockchain in general is that there are people that are weaponizing their whiteness and privilege in these spaces to control the outcomes of some of these DAOs, to weaponize their voting power, to weaponize their tokens, to weaponize their digital assets against those of us who actually speak up and hold folks to the fire in these spaces. This has happened when Constitution DAO was happening, and people basically attempted to silence some of us, including myself, around the MAGA behavior happening in the Discord, and it's happening now around Brantly. When most of us are speaking up and saying, hey, not only is Brantly involved in ENS, the DAO, but Brantly is also involved in adjacent spaces and hyper involved in Web3 in general. And so what does that look like for other spaces to actually hold them accountable and really have these conversations? Lastly, before I continue to go on a rampage, so I'm pissed off, the DAOs and other, if you're a core contributor or contributor at some of these DAOs, I don't want to hear about diversity and inclusion programs. I want y'all to like put your money, your ETH where your mouth is, and start equity programs and let Black and brown folks own that shit and let us run with that shit. Start to resource us, start to put your ETH in the pockets of ourselves, and start to resource the programs that we actually want to build from the ground up for ourselves. And that's just reality. Reparations is key if we want to hold space for like what Web3 really can be and the possibilities that exist here. And we don't owe you shit. We don't owe you apologies. We don't owe you stages. We don't owe you conversations. If you get called out for racism, if you get called out for homophobia, transphobia, shitting on sex workers and other folks that are under resourced and come from these communities. And so like, let's keep it funky in this space, and like, let's hold people to the fire. This is not going to be a space where y'all get to continue to hold your KKK hoods in the closet and not be held accountable for that shit, because karma's a bitch and y'all gonna get it left or right. And so I just wanted to say that shit, because I think there's a lot of stuff happening on these stages, and we need to hold space for like real equity and what that actually looks like. And so Black and brown folks, trans folks, queer folks, two-spirited folks that come from under-resourced communities, happy to come together and like dream up this shit. But at the moment, like, let's just hold space for us and make sure we take deep breaths and hold our mental wellness and health intact, because this shit is a lot. And so just want to show love to you, Alisha, and keep it funky one more time for the stage. So
Natalie, I so appreciate you. I was ready to like wrap the space on your after you speaking, because I think that's a really great takeaway. This is, you know, ENS names mean, and crypto and all of the tools that we have mean that you can resource people. It literally takes seconds. Like it doesn't take 3 days of bank transfers and things like that. Like you can act now if you want to. If you want your actions to like follow your values, you can do it really quickly actually. And so I am really excited for, I don't know, just to see that happen, and I'm really grateful for your sharing kind of your opinion. I really appreciate you. And Dean Eigenman, I'd love to just like wrap this space on your input, your takes, and just like hear from you.
Hey Alicia, how are you?
Hey.
I'm thank you for doing this. I feel like you've probably had the hardest day out of all of us dealing with this. So like that's a first.
Thanks.
I'm gonna be the troll that I am and just say it up front. I'm gonna do a little experiment. I will buy any vote that transfers from Brantly to me, and for every vote that I get on ENS, I will donate 1% of the value of that vote to LGBTQ plus charities. So if all of Brantly's votes are transferred to me, by my math, that'll be $100,000 that I will be donating to any LGBTQ plus causes. And I'll probably do a vote for the people who delegated to me to decide which charities to donate that to as well.
Can I make a suggestion, Dean? Charm, I got you.
You can, of course.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people are donating to Planned Parenthood and other organizations, but the one thing you can do in this space to ensure equity and to make sure that Black and brown folks, queer folks, trans folks, sex workers, and Kinksters are getting resources, it's to donate directly to them and practice mutual aid and direct giving. Sometimes these organizations, and we can talk in the back end, don't actually trickle down resources to these particular communities. Oftentimes, these organizations are led in the back end by cis white folks. And so I just wanted to hold space for direct giving and mutual aid and to find people in these spaces that are holding up these stages, that are out here in the trenches of Web3 and doing the work, and to resource those folks. You're free to do whatever you want, but I just really want to hold in reality space for direct giving and mutual aid, because that's where we make the most impact.
So the last donation that I did in crypto was was during the Black Lives Matter protest, and everything there went to mutual aid projects. I did that together with my friend Tux. We did like an incentive where anyone who gave us crypto, we doubled the amount. And so I'm happy to do something like that again. As said, I probably will like let the people decide who delegate their votes to me where I donate the money. Currently, I'm thinking about the Trevor Project. I'm currently thinking about mainly LGBTQ plus communities for obvious reasons, because that's what Brantly has been the most intolerant of. I haven't fully planned it yet. I'm currently writing a blog post about like why I'm doing this, and then after that, we'll decide or help let people decide where the money should go to. But very much appreciate your input.
Peace, Natalie.
Hey, Lou.
Peace, Dean. I had to walk out because my son got the remote and there's a whole different jam going on in the other room. But I just want to say quickly that what I want to so a key part about restoration in a community, Dean, is when you ask the person and the people that have been harmed what they need. It is a vast and revolutionary departure from paternalism.
I completely agree with you.
Wait, please don't cut my wisdom. Thank you so much. My offering is that, so what it helps us do is to cultivate trust, right? And what I hear someone of the community saying is that here are our needs. So it's not like, oh, I did that before. Yeah, I know direct aid and mutual aid. What we're saying best practice is, before you already decide what you're going to do, right? To this end, certainly you can do what you want. Autonomy is real, but I'm saying in this space, to offer it as a reparative act, right? Without first saying, what do folks need, right? Then when folks say, oh, this is my need, saying, okay, let's talk about me meeting that need. This is the way I would like to support meeting that need, rather than say, I've already decided like where the Band-Aid is, and I'm going to go get my Band-Aid and I'm going to go put it on. So that's my offering to anyone at any time. Whenever you're thinking about how do I make it right, your number one repair, like whatever reparative act your biggest tool, right? And the most genuine and the most effective in actually being responsive, not reactive, not performative, not paternalistic, not no, but like to be completely and wholly invested in the community and improving that community, or any, so you actually go to the community and you say, what do you need? And if you have the resources to meet those needs, right? Because for some people
Yeah,
it might not be the Trevor Project at all, right?
that's
I'm familiar with that
I
organization.
completely.
And again, please don't cut my wisdom. I didn't cut your wisdom. My offering is not for this to be about, a defense mechanism or anything. I am just saying that if you choose to do that thing, right? Which sounds like something that you feel charged with doing, do it. But I would say it's a reach to then connect it directly to this event and say that it was a part of the restoration, or that it was a reparative act, because it's not rooted in actually what the community, that the impact of this community right in front of you, not the thing that's outside of this thing, right? That we don't, the thing about, and I had a friend who was who programmed with and supported Trevor Project for over 6 years, and so it's no slang to the organization, but all of those big bureaucracies, like those big organizations, like the trickle down doesn't really ever really make it down to the ground of the people who were in this call tonight, who were talking about the fact that they're under resourced, very much so marginalized, and a part of the global majority. So I would say, that's my offering.
Yeah. So
And I don't, yeah.
I completely agree with you. And just to give you some context, I am mixed race. I am a bisexual man, and I left ENS as an employee because I did not agree with the opinions of Brantly. And so there's a bit of context on like who I am as a person. And as said, I have not decided to use the Trevor Project yet. They are front runner for me right now, and that's just for personal reasons. I will probably be like gathering from the community where they think the money is best to go to, and we'll be going based off of that. But just so you know the context, like I was affected by this person, which is why like I am doing this.
Yeah, thank you, Sham and Dean, for the comments. I can see Gloria, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to. Okay, babe. I really am someone who like really wants to give back power back to the people, for them to be able to amplify the organizations that like would needed to be funded from that. And I know, like, and all transparency, I work at GetCoin. I understand GetCoin. I understand our matching pools. But it would be really nice to see some pool of funds go somewhere where then the community themselves could vote on where those funds are allocated to, and have those needs met, and those people who are underfunded could put their grants up for proposals and get funded by the community again, in a way where their dollars or tokens or whatever would actually be impacted or compounded in ways that would be beneficial for them. So like, I think that, if we're in this Web3 space and we have some of these tools available, we might want to think about how can we use these tools to give more power to those who've had the least power for the longest time.
Yeah, well, so with Gitcoin grants round 13 kicking off on March 9th, I'm just like thinking out loud, just as you're talking, that I feel like it would be a great opportunity for ENS to use like an ENS ecosystem round to like fund a really, really substantial round to, build out this community and ecosystem in a way that represents kind of, the vision that we're working towards. And that is something that can take place, from March 9th. If you're interested in participating, I will happily have, lot more conversations about this, and we'll probably run a space on it. I know that Scott was in here a second ago, and there are other people from Gitcoin, but, the timing of the universe means that this could be something. I just feel like this is an opportunity. So I'll just bring that up. Also, just on kind of donations to organizations versus individuals, I actually think this is, one of the most incredible things about ENS names, which is that you can literally like give directly to a person with ease. It's transparent. Everyone can see it. You can do it, over and over again. It is kind of revolutionary. Like something that I'm really excited about is the potential of ENS for like charitable and social impact causes. There's actually this this podcast episode that were the founders of givedirectly.org. They actually have their .eth name, givedirectly.eth. They were talking about how they've essentially conducted studies over like extended periods of time about how different outcomes are if you just give people money directly, and then you don't even tell them what to do with it. You just like give people the money, and they know how to, distribute that wealth to with where they need it. And I just think, I was so excited when I had that podcast episode, and I reached out to them because I think that is such an opportunity for what we are able to do here in Web3. And I think that if we're really serious, like I said, if your actions follow your values, then like everyone can take action, and I'm really excited about that. So thank you, everyone. If you've been listening in the space, I really appreciate that. I think that we've heard today that radical listening is as much of this kind of dynamic and relationship as it is to speak. To all of the speakers, thank you so much. I am so grateful for your strength and vulnerability, and I just appreciate that. I am really sorry that you feel hurt. I hope you do know that it isn't that it is your home here in Web3, and that also I think the tone of this is that beyond the DAO governance, like the DAO governance is one thing, like it's just one thing. There are so many things to do to build out the infrastructure that is needed. It is actually like a lot more beyond governance votes. It's like one thing. It should be the starting point, and in my opinion, it should be like the bare minimum. And so I'm kind of excited to see that, like I said, where are we in days and weeks, in months, and I hope that we really kind of put the tools and the community that we have to work. I will probably be back on a Twitter space tomorrow or the next day, and just again, thank you, and I appreciate you all.
Thank you, Alisha.
Thank you, Alisha. Sending you lots of love as you go through this space during this time right now, too. Please take care of your own mental health as well.